Opening credits. King from the Sky. A sci-fi alien lion shifter romance. By Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated, using Google technology. Chapter 1. Okay, Emily. It's your turn. Emily Dyson looked up from the French fries she was scarfing down, and feeling super guilty about to see the entire group staring at her. She had no idea what they were looking at or what it was her turn for, because for the last 5 minutes, she had been in fatty food heaven. She had been on a crazy diet lately that forbid her to eat potatoes, rice or bread, and she was about to go insane. She had only lost a few pounds and she felt like total crap. So when her girlfriends had suggested that she go out with them tonight to have some beers, she said, hell yeah. She had missed her beloved fries so much that she had become oblivious to the world around her, as she stuffed them into her mouth and savored every salty, fatty, and carb-filled morsel of them. She thought that she could actually hear her waistline expanding, but she really didn't care. She worked hard, and she felt that she deserved to indulge in some great junk food every now and then. Diet be damned. Viva la fat. Earth to Emily. Ellie said. Ellie was currently holding up an empty beer bottle, and as she glanced around the table, the others began to follow suit, holding up their own empty bottles. I think she is having a cardiac arrest, Amber piped up with a goofy grin. Amber was the cut-up of the group typically, but sometimes she overdid it, and you had to tell her to keep a lid on it. There was definitely such a thing as Amber overload. Maybe a stroke? Laura added. Nah, she is just spacing out thinking about that drop-dead gorgeous bartender. Ellie said as she slapped Laura an affirmative high five. Emily had noticed the bartender as well. He was tall, gorgeous with bright blue eyes, a great smile, and an amazing tight body. So Emily figured he had to be gay. He was too well-groomed and neat, but she had wondered that just maybe he wasn't. Of course that would put her back on the hot seat, and she would have to talk to him. He had openly flirted with her a few times when she was at the bar with Ellie, and she had of course read way too much into it. He was a bartender. He was flirty with everyone because he wanted tips. That was all. He could never be interested in her. She had been told that she was attractive, but she had always been on the curvy side, and she felt frumpy and fat. Of course she had eyes, and she could see that she was actually quite attractive. She had been blessed with fat in all of the right places, but for some reason she had never been able to embrace it. She felt like she was on display, and that she was going to be groped all the time. So she wore baggy clothes, and tried to hide herself the best she could, even refusing to wear contact lenses instead of her thick glasses. Emily was well aware that she sent a message to the world to leave her alone, but that was the way she liked it. Emily had always been very shy and introverted. She wasn't sure why, but she preferred her books and she preferred her animals. That was why she had become a vet. She had loved animals since she was a kid and had never dreamed or thought of doing anything else. Oh man. I think she may be in a coma or something, Ellie said, sounding worried for a minute. Emily snapped out of it quickly. I'm okay. I was just really enjoying these fries. Damn. She needs a man real bad, Laura cracked. The whole table burst out laughing. It's your turn to get the next round of beers, Ellie said. She handed Emily the now empty bucket. Oh, okay, Emily said as she scooted out of the booth towards the bar. She hardly ever drank beer, but she had to admit she was having a great time. She never got to hang out with the girls much anymore, since she had taken over full-time vet duties at the animal hospital she worked at. Emily had been Dr. Rauch's assistant for the past 2 years, and he had retired a few months ago and left the business to her. She was flabbergasted when it happened, but in a way she kind of expected it, and always had the idea that Dr. Rauch was actually grooming her to take over since she had started working there in high school. Her first job was at the animal hospital handling billing duties, scheduling appointments, cleaning cages and exam rooms, and pretty much every other boring job that an animal clinic required to keep functioning. But she loved it and asked the vet as many questions as she possibly could, constantly. And she got to see and work with her beloved animals. That had been the best thing. Emily had continued working there all the way through college, and then when she became a licensed vet, she was shocked when Dr. Rauch offered her a job. He had lost his previous assistant 6 months before, when they decided to open their own practice and moved out of the area. During that time, he had not hired anyone else, but basically told her that the job was hers when she graduated. Emily had never been happier. But it was a lot of work. Especially since her officer manager had had a stroke and been forced to quit a month before. So she had been running the office and doing her veterinarian duties. This had left little time for any sort of a social life. Emily ordered the beers and tried not to lock eyes with the gorgeous bartender this time. He made her weak in the knees any time she looked at him, especially when he flashed that smile at her. Oh, she wanted to take him home and give him a censored bath. She felt a blush coming on as that idea popped into her head. It felt like everyone could just tell what she was thinking. As she glanced around at the other people all having a great time and enjoying life, she had to wonder how people did this so often, because she recognized several of the patrons from the last time she came to the Morocco's bar. And Emily found it fascinating how the bartender remembered everyone and their go-to drink as he worked from one end of the bar to the other. The bartender Larry, all of the ladies knew Larry, sat the bucket of beers on the counter and smiled at her with an added wink as she started to walk away. She had started a tab earlier and had totally lost count of how much was on there now. She thought that she might want to keep an eye on that, but that thought was pushed far back into her brain as she tried to keep from passing out at the amazing smile of the sexy Larry. When Emily made it back to her table, she found that all of her friends were pointing and laughing at her. They had apparently been keeping a close eye on her and how the interaction with Larry had gone. We saw the wink, Ellie said through a fit of laughter. So? Emily replied as she sat down and slid back into her spot on the booth. That guy wants you so bad, Laura moaned as if she was writing something. Oh, you guys are so messed up. I'm not sure getting another round of beers was a good idea. I think you girls need to be cut off, Emily said. She was starting to feel the embarrassment drop off of her shoulders. She was aware that a lot of the time, she just took herself and everything else much too seriously. It was nice to have friends like these to relax with, and to remind her of how much of a goon she was being sometimes. What? We must have beer, Ellie replied with a fake demon voice that set the other girls back into a new fit of laughter. Emily had known all of her group since college. She and Ellie had been roommates and instant best friends since freshman year. You would never know it to look at her, but Ellie was great at her job as a crisis counselor. Then drink up and stop worrying about my love life, Emily said as she grabbed a beer from the bucket, twisted off the cap and began to chug. She had not done a chug-a-lug in a long time, and she decided that there was no time like the present. The beer tasted good as it rolled down her throat, the bubbles stinging the back of her censored sweetly. Go. Go. Go, the group chanted until Emily had to stop drinking with a quarter of the bottle left to go. Her stamina was not nearly what it had once been. Ooh. Lame? Ellie and Amber said in unison. You have lost your touch, Laura said as she began to swig from her own bottle. I know. It's been a while. You should have been practicing at home, Ellie said. What? I'm not an alcoholic like you, Emily replied with a smile. I'm an alcohol enthusiast, there is a big difference. Emily had to shake her head as she looked at this insane group of misfits she had somehow wrangled together in her college days. But she had to admit she was having a blast. It had been way too long since she had been out with her friends. It was one thing to love your work and to be dedicated, but she had to learn to prioritize a bit better so that she could enjoy her life a bit more. All work and not nearly enough play had left her exhausted and almost unaware anymore of how to unwind. She just needed to strike a balance, which would be much easier to do if she ever got an office manager or another vet to share the practice with. But so far she had not found anyone that she really clicked with on a professional level for either position. There were several qualified candidates, but she knew that she had to enjoy working with these people on a daily basis and being with them 8 hours a day. So that was a big factor in who was selected. If only at least one of her college friends had followed her into the exciting world of veterinarian science. "So, how about your new guy, Laura? I'm surprised that he let you out to play tonight," Ellie said. "What? I think you got that the other way around, sister. I have him by the balls, and I tell him when he can play," Laura replied. "Oh, that is hysterical." "It can be. I imagine he is passed out in front of the TV right now with a pizza and an empty six-pack." "Well, hell. That sounds like the party is at your house," Amber replied. The girls loved to pick on Laura because she was the only one of them to get married so far. She had gotten married about 6 months ago, and she was still getting used to it. With marriage came a great responsibility, Emily thought to herself with a smile. But she hoped to get there herself one day. She could tell how happy Laura was to be married to the man of her dreams, even if she did complain and make fun of all the disgusting and weird things he did. Really, Emily thought that was just Laura's way of talking about how good it felt to be with someone and how amazing he was, because to come right out and say he was amazing would have been weird and lame. Emily noticed a lot of women did that, who were in strong relationships. It had been almost 6 months since she had been with anyone. That relationship had only lasted for 5 months before she got the text message that Brad wanted to see other people. Seriously? The dingus broke up with her over a text message. That was a definite low point in her love life, she felt. Emily wasn't really sure why she had been so unlucky in love. If she had some better insight, then she might fix it so that she knew how to stop failing in that department. But she figured that it would happen eventually, or she would become some weird cat lady. Except she was more of a dog person. Of course she loved all animals, but as an actual pet, she just needed the happy-go-lucky nature and the overwhelming affection that a dog gave you. There was nothing better. She thought about her pug Bailey. He was at home for her right now, probably wondering where she was. He would smother her with licks and demand hugs the second that she walked in the door. That was their routine. She had stopped home briefly after work just to take him for a walk, and then she was on her way to meet the girls. Never mind that she was utterly exhausted after a long week at work, and all she wanted to do was take a hot bubble bath, have a nice cup of tea, and do some reading. But it was Thursday. She would have all weekend to do that. It wasn't like she had any other plans. The group of friends went through one more bucket of beer and another round of chicken wings before calling it a night. Emily left the bar feeling good, but bloated. She had not drank that much beer in a long time, and she felt just a little bit tipsy, but she had made sure not to overdo it, and she imagined it would be gone by the time that she finished walking home. Emily only lived about 6 blocks away, and she had elected to walk simply because she knew that she would be drinking. She had thought about ordering an Uber driver, but decided it was too nice of a night, and since she had eaten and drank so many empty calories, she felt horribly guilty, so she wanted to try to walk some of it off at least. Besides, she enjoyed quiet walks at night sometimes. That was the great thing about a small town like Buckeye. There was very little crime, and it was almost like a throwback to the 50s, where everyone knew everyone else. She had lived here her whole life, and Emily couldn't imagine living anywhere else. Besides, it was only a 20-minute drive from the city and the university she had attended. Emily was just rounding the block towards her house when her phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel, her best veterinarian assistant. She was not feeling well and had suddenly had to go home. She thought she had food poisoning and couldn't stay at the clinic to keep an eye on the animals who were having to stay overnight. She wondered if it was possible for her to check in on them. Emily sighed and texted her back that she would take care of it. Rachel lived a good 15 miles away and was a reliable employee. They alternated on who would take the graveyard shift and stay with the animals in the hospital portion of the clinic every night. There were some that had to be hooked up to fours. Emily turned around and began her walk towards the animal hospital. It was only about a 10-minute walk for her, and she walked it most days. It was great exercise, and she hated wasting any more gas than she had to. A lot of people thought vets made crazy money. That was just not so. Emily arrived at the animal hospital and let herself in with her keys. She locked the door behind her and turned on the light. She was always amazed at the way the hospital looked during the night hours when no one was here. She could hear the whine of the animals in the back, but there was no human element here, and it was somewhat creepy. She wasn't sure why that was, but she had noticed it since she had started working there. She wasn't allowed to do the graveyard shift pop-ins until after she turned 18 because of the labor laws, but she had never minded them. She usually just packed a few sodas and a good book and enjoyed taking care of her furry little friends. She was going to probably leave briefly to check in on Bailey at some point. She usually made arrangements for him to stay with Ellie or Laura. Emily had tried just bringing him to the clinic with her, but he became so agitated at the barking of the other dogs that it was a big cause of anxiety for him. Emily walked into the small employee lounge area where she and her meager staff ate lunch every day. They would close the clinic for that hour and take turns going to get lunch for everyone else. It was a fun time. She grabbed a diet soda from the fridge and an ice cream bar. The damage had already been done to her diet for the day, and sat them down on the front desk. When she walked back into the hospital section, she had never in her wildest dreams thought she would witness what she stumbled into. As she pushed open the door, she saw something that would forever change her perception of reality and logic as she had understood it up to that point. Her entire world was about to get turned upside down. Chapter 2. There, standing about 15 feet from her, rummaging through the medicine drawers, was a man. He appeared to be about 6 feet tall and handsome. His features were sharp and chiseled. His eyes were piercing, and the body that was on full display due to the fact he was only wearing a very torn-up pair of dirty jeans was muscular and lean. But he wasn't a man. He was only half of a man as far as she could see. The other half of him was a lion. His face kept changing. One second he was a man, and the next he was turning into a lion with a long, thick mane, huge foaming jaws with large teeth and the most menacing eyes. His hands were deformed claws that were trying to manipulate the pill bottles to identify the pills that he was trying to take. How was this possible? She had to be dreaming. She was hallucinating. There was no way in hell she was really witnessing this. Emily's stomach began to flip from side to side inside of her abdomen. She felt more nauseous than she had ever been before as she waited for her guts to empty themselves, but nothing was happening. As she waited to be sick on the floor, she felt her world growing dizzy and dark. She was hyperventilating. Emily used to get panic attacks when she was younger, but she had not experienced this for years. She thought she had it all under control, had moved past all of those demons. Her friendships had been so instrumental in her recovery over her anxiety issues in recent years. But now, witnessing this monstrosity taking place in front of her, the concept of fear was taking on a brand new definition that far exceeded what she knew as fear. She was petrified to the very core of her soul. And she was frozen stiff. She could not move a muscle, her body reacting as it tried to somehow deal with what the external world had just thrown at her. Emily had to calm down. There was nothing in this world that she couldn't handle. She kept repeating the mantra in her head, learned at the therapy sessions she went to when she was a teenager. She had to remember that she was still in control of herself. She was stronger than anything in the world. Nothing could erase her. The creature fell to the floor, wincing in pain as it struggled with the medication. It brought its deformed claws to its head, cradling its skull, writhing in agony. Emily could see the blood spilling on the floor. This thing was hurt. It was hurt badly. It appeared to have been shot, and it was in horrible pain. Its wailing cries bounced off the walls, screeching in her ears and pounding into her brain, leaving echoing aftershocks to bounce around inside the cavities of her skull. Emily brought her own hands up to her ears to block out the sound, certain that her ears were actually bleeding. She had to get out of here. This thing was going to kill her if it got up. She tried to calm her mind down enough so that her flight response would kick in. The being frozen thing was pointless, she thought. She had to move, she had to call the cops or somebody. Help me. The creature's voice was low and guttural, as if it were drowning in its own fluids. It was an odd combination of a lion's roar and a man's voice. It was unreal. Emily was losing her mind. She was absolutely losing her mind. Why had this happened to her? Her life was really good. She had just had an amazing night hanging out with friends. Why would her mind decide on this exact moment to shut down? Was she really that tired? Or had she just snapped and lost complete touch with reality? She began to move backwards slowly, amazed that her legs were functioning again. She was afraid of what this creature might be capable of. It might have been faking for all she realized, only to rip her to shreds when she tried to run, flying through the air with its lion strength and pouncing on her. Help me. The voice came again, and this time it was mostly human. Emily could see the lion receding as the whole man came through. His face was a contorted, twisted expression of pure agony. He pointed to the wound in his
censored,
and she could plainly see the blood pouring through his now human fingertips. Help make the pain stop. The man groaned as he reached for the pills that had spilled onto the floor. Emily couldn't take it any longer. She had to help this man, creature, or whatever he was. The gold in her heart would not let her sit by while an innocent creature suffered. She was sure she was going to die in the next few minutes. That thought never left her as she rushed to his aid. She moved to the other side of the room, walking past the man lying on the floor, and grabbed the pain meds from the right drawer, which was locked. She grabbed the morphine and a needle, measured out the dose, flicked the needle to push out any air that might have been trapped, and injected him in the arm. The lion roared to life, and Emily leapt backwards against the wall in fear. She shielded her face with her hands and dropped the syringe to the ground. Then she waited. She waited for the horrible thing to tear her apart limb from limb. She had never felt so terrified, but she had never felt so calm either. It was as if she had finally accepted that she was going to die tonight, but she could feel good doing it because she had died trying to help someone else. Are you okay? The voice cut through all of her mental chaos and terror to bring her a single clear message. She was not going to die. Are you okay? The man asked again. Emily uncovered her face and looked ahead. The man was lying on the floor still, bleeding profusely from the wound in his stomach, but he was just a man. There was no sign of a lion anywhere. Emily looked around the room, her eyes growing wider until they felt like they were going to burst out of her skull. Emily had not even realized that she had whacked the back of her head pretty solidly when she jumped back as the lion roared at her. She had not even felt the impact or the pain until now, as she tried to stand up, and the flashes of pain shot through her cranium, causing her to wince. She decided on a slow approach. Emily was surprised to see her legs were still working, and she was able to get to her feet and actually move freely again. She had not been sure she would ever have that pleasure again, just a few minutes ago. Miss, are you all right? The man groaned again. Emily was momentarily distracted by how much blood this man was losing, but she managed to mumble the words, "I'm fine," by some miracle. Good. You had me worried for a second, the man replied. He was really bleeding profusely. He needed a doctor. Oh my God, Emily said. You are shot, aren't you? Yeah, it's not as bad as it looks. It just hurts a lot, the man said. Are you nuts? We have to call an ambulance. You need serious help here. No. I don't want any hospitals or doctors. Can't you just patch me up here? Emily swallowed as she realized that she probably could, but working on a human was very different to working on a dog. The anatomy was just a bit more complex, and as much as she loved animals, and occasionally did lose some of them, she was not sure she would be able to handle losing a damn person. No. I'm a vet. It's not the same thing. I don't think I've ever pulled a bullet out of any living thing, let alone a person. I'm calling an ambulance. Emily pulled her cell phone out of her pocket and began to select 911 on speed dial. She had never really thought she would need to use that, but she was once again learning the value of preparation. Her dad had been so right. No. Please, the man pleaded once again. This is not a negotiation, Emily replied as she started to call 911 again. No ambulance. I'll go to the hospital, but only if you drive me. Emily stood there staring at her phone for several seconds, wondering what the hell she was supposed to do in this situation. On the one hand, there was some guy who had been shot for a reason who seemed very upset about being transported by an ambulance. There was suspicion and possible criminal written all over the man. But there was something else too. She could not explain what it was, but she trusted him somehow. Okay. I'll take you myself, but you had better start talking and giving me some answers, Emily said. The man nodded. Chapter 3. So what the hell are you? Emily asked. She had almost expected the man to be dead or gone when she came back to the animal hospital with her car. It had taken her just 12 minutes to run the 4 blocks home and back, and she was starting to feel pretty good about the food and alcohol she had consumed that night. With all that had happened to her, and as fast as she just ran, she was sure she had burned up all those evil calories. Yay fitness! She almost laughed at the insanity that rolled through her brain sometimes. What? The man asked. Don't play games with me. This is serious. What the hell are you? The man took a deep breath. My name is Alex. As you may have guessed, I'm not like other guys. Emily glanced at his corny sense of humor, but she did feel a zing of sexy attraction for that smile he was sporting. Are you talking about the lion thing? Yeah, I kind of noticed that, Emily replied, laying on the sarcasm extra thick. Yeah. I'm a shifter. I possess the power to turn into a lion, which apparently is a rare thing on this planet. What do you mean, on this planet? Emily asked. What the hell was he trying to say? Being vague and dancing around questions was more of a woman's thing, or a politician's. I can't tell you anymore, Alex said. I'd be putting your life in danger if I did. I want answers. Or I'm calling the police right now, Emily said. Alex was silent for a moment. Finally, he spoke again. Okay, I'm not from Earth. I come from a planet called Zuha. It is about 80 light years away from here. What? Are you serious? Do you really think there is another rational explanation for what you just saw? Alex responded, wincing in pain as he grabbed his stomach. He was applying pressure and trying to stop the bleeding. Emily's mind began to spin around what Alex had just told her. But she knew he was right. There was no other explanation for what had happened right before her eyes. The man beside her was no man at all, he was an alien. She wanted to ask him how many others were just like him. What was he doing here? How had he been shot, but the hospital was looming a few hundred feet in front of them? There would be time for questions later. He was going to die if he didn't get some help ASAP, though it was nothing short of miraculous that he had not died yet, given how much blood he had lost and the length of time the bullet had been in his system. She pulled up in front of the and ran inside. The woman at the front desk was definitely bored out of her mind as she sat there reading a book on her phone and occasionally glancing at her computer screen. It was a slow night apparently in the of their small little town. Emily was about to change all of that. I have a gunshot victim. I need help, Emily yelled only a few feet from the lady's face. Emily ran back out of the hospital screaming that he was outside. She ran to the passenger's side seat and carefully started to ease Alex out of the car. She noticed that he had been considerate enough to only bleed on the towels she had placed over the seat of the car for him. Just then a few EMTs arrived with a wheelchair and quickly wheeled him inside. Emily waited in the waiting room, while Alex was wheeled to a room in the back. She was in shock that the man had been able to even carry on a conversation with an injury like that. It was beyond insane. Emily had avoided the questions that the admittance representative had asked her about Alex's identity and his insurance. She explained to the woman that she did not know the man. She had found him shot in the street by himself, and she didn't want to waste time waiting for an ambulance. The woman didn't seem to really buy the whole story, but it was enough to buy some time until Alex could give them some real answers or simply vanish into thin air. That was a possibility too. He might never come back out again. Emily had so many questions to ask him about life and the universe. How had he got here? What had happened to him? How did he get such an amazing smile? Emily had tried to forget that sexy smile and those amazing dimples of his, but she just couldn't get it out of her head. It had been a while since a man had such a profound effect on her, and she was starting to seriously wonder what in the hell was wrong with her. She had ignored her social life for months and had never taken her dating life that seriously anyway, or at least she pretended not to. It helped to hide the pain of rejection. And now here was this mystery man who wasn't even a man at all. He was a bona fide alien. What had her life become? Or was he really an alien? It was possible that he'd made the whole thing up. But she knew what she had seen. She was not crazy, and she had not been hallucinating. The man was turning back and forth from man to lion, repeatedly in front of her. It had not been a hallucination. There was no way it was humanly possible, unless you were not human. She didn't believe in monsters or ghosts, so it had to be the truth. Come to think of it, she didn't believe in aliens either. She had never really given much credibility or real thought to the idea that there was life on other planets. It had never been something she was concerned with, and she had accepted that she would probably never get to explore other galaxies in her lifetime. If she had been born 3,000 years into the future, then that might have been a possibility. The more she thought about it, the more mixed her feelings became. Was it weird that she found the alien thing to be incredibly sexy and interesting? Was she really that demented? She groaned to herself at the possibility that anything could ever happen between them. Was he even human? He appeared to be an ordinary man who was able to shift into a lion. As that thought raced through her mind, she had to laugh out loud. Jesus, Emily. What have you gotten yourself into? What is wrong with you? You can't develop a mini crush on some guy who is from outer space. She wondered what her friends would say if they were there and knew the story. Laura would have told her to go for it, but the others might have been severely freaked out. She was sure of it. She didn't even know why she was waiting anymore. Did she really have to find out everything about him that badly? The short answer was yes. Definitely yes. Emily moaned as she closed her tired eyes to let them rest. Her eyeballs felt like they were being scraped out by some madman with a scalpel. She had decided to wear contacts tonight, and she was paying for it now. Why didn't she just stay with the glasses? Because her friends would have razzed her about it all night long. That was why. She knew her friends meant well, but sometimes their constant joking at her expense got the better of her, and it was always worse when they had been drinking. But she knew they loved her, and would never want to hurt her feelings. They just wished that she would get out a bit more, and get excited about life. She had tried to tell them over and over that she loved her life, but to them real life was all about finding romance. Sometimes her friends were worse than the popular girls' clique on a teenage soap opera. It was pathetic. So pathetic. She woke up hours later in the waiting room to a cop shaking her shoulder. He looked upset. Chapter 4. So you don't have any idea who he is? The cop asked for the 10th time. Emily sipped her cup of nasty hospital coffee and rolled her eyes at the officer. He was a middle-aged man who had obviously been a cop for a long time and had grown comfortable and very, very fat in his slow-paced role as a small-town officer of the law. He hated to be dragged out of bed to apprehend some thug who may or may not be a menace to society, only to find that the guy had run away already. No. I only met him by accident and saw that he needed help. I didn't have a chance to get any notes together for his biography, Emily replied. She was aware of how nasty she sounded, but she was both disappointed that Alex was gone, and she was angry that this man wanted to give her shit about it. He wasn't able to talk? You didn't ask him his name or anything else about himself? No. I thought I made that clear. Do you often pick up stray men who have been shot and take them to the hospital yourself? They have these things called ambulances that do that for you, and best thing is they have trained EMTs that can help the patient on the way to the hospital. You didn't think to call the 3 magic digits that any 6-year-old knows to make that happen? Emily wanted to slap this cop back and forth until her hand was broken. How dare he speak to her that way? Emily was not usually one to cause mischief or trouble. In fact, she tried to avoid those things whenever humanly possible, but it was taking every ounce of her self-control to keep from telling this man what she thought. I was only a few blocks away, he looked really injured, and I knew that he might bleed to death before an ambulance arrived. We didn't have any time to waste. I work in the healthcare field. We work with science, not theories. Well, I'll tell you that if we find this man, and we find out that you were hiding something from us, then you are going to be in a lot of trouble. The man is obviously hiding something. He didn't want an ambulance, and he ran for daylight the second he had the chance, after the doctors had patched him up. Now you don't have to be a cop or some lady with a fancy degree to know that this sounds damn suspicious, and that man is hiding something. Now why don't you cut out all the sarcastic crap and just tell us what he told you? The cop looked her dead in the eyes. He was not the sharpest tool in the shed, but he had a lot of experience with people lying to him, and he had pretty much developed a real-world PhD in it. But could she really tell him the truth? Could she really say that Alex was an alien of all things? This cop would have her committed if she did. We are waiting for an answer and we don't have all night, he said. He told me he was an alien. The cop paused for a moment and looked at the front desk lady. He glanced back at Emily and then burst out laughing. Are you serious? He told you he was an alien? You wouldn't be making this up now, would you? The cop asked. You think someone would be stupid enough to make that up? Emily asked. The cop rolled his eyes, obviously seeing her point. This was not the sort of thing a sane person would lie about. Okay, so he told you he was an alien. Well, now I'm almost positive it's some sort of a drug deal gone south. That man had to be high as a kite. Plus, that would explain why he was not screaming in agony or going into shock by the time he came in here. Yeah, I figured as much. That's why I didn't tell you. It seemed unimportant and I didn't want to waste your time with such nonsense, Emily said. Well, that is very kind of you to think of us. You can be on your way now, but we might need to talk with you again. Emily handed the cop her card. He glanced at it and huffed again, probably making fun of the health field she had claimed to be a member of. But the veterinarian sciences sure as hell counted in her opinion. Speaking of which, she could not wait to get back to her animals and make sure they were okay. The events of last night had scared the hell out of them, and they were all probably still freaking out about it. They had seen the lion and smelled its distinctive scent. The cop huffed and glared daggers at her. Emily could not help the smile that crept across her face right then. It felt good to win the mental victory over this slob. She had never felt that way about law enforcement before, but if this was the best that her town had to offer, then she was really disappointed. The cop walked away with his tail between his legs and smoke coming out of his ears. On the way home, Emily's mind raced a mile a minute trying to come to grips with what the strange man had told her. No matter what, she could not stop wondering if what he had said was true. and what that might mean for her, or for the rest of the world even. Were the aliens gearing up for an attack of some sort? Why had he come here? Were they just trying to blend in to study the planet out of curiosity, or was there a more sinister reason behind it? And most troubling of all, she could not stop wondering who was after him. Who had shot him? Was it the government? Were there really a Men in Black, or was it just a myth? Maybe he had found out some information he was not supposed to know, or he had been found out to be an alien, and they had tried to kill him before he could report anything back to his alien leaders. Emily had to laugh at the dizzying ideas bouncing around in her head. The whole thing was starting to sound like a horrible bad dream, and she wasn't sure that she was ever really going to be able to wake up from it. But she had to try. There was no one that she could talk to about this. There was no one that she could trust. The cops back there had looked at her, as if she were a lunatic. They knew that she was hiding something, and they would drag it out of her eventually. She just wished that she had not crossed paths with the mysterious man. Emily found herself thinking about the way his body looked. It was so slender and sleek. Was it a real human body? Or was it just some sort of disguise? Did aliens actually look like us, or was he just doing a great impersonation? If so, he had chosen a miraculous body. Every muscle was tight and delicious looking. She had not been able to get the images of his tight abs out of her mind, even though they were stained with blood most of the time she had seen him. She wondered what would happen to her if the cops found out she was lying. Would they arrest her? Would they throw her in a cell and close the door, throwing away the key? What sort of penalty was in store for people who lied about evidence of alien life, she wondered. But she didn't have evidence of alien life. She just had a head full of scenes that were only hers. No one else had seen the lion. No one else had heard the words that Alex spoke to her. She was not in any danger. Nobody had to know anything about it. She was okay. But as she drove to the kennel to check on the dogs, she didn't feel okay. She didn't feel okay at all. Chapter 5. Alex awoke with a start. The room was dark, and he smelled a scent that sounded very familiar. The smell invaded his nostrils and made him feel secure and safe. Had he been dreaming? He wasn't sure. Everything was so confusing. The darkness beckoned to him to greet it, as if it contained all of the secrets that he wanted to know inside of it. Was he still lost inside of a dream, or was he awake? There were so many strange thoughts going through his head. He had been shot. It was burning deep inside his guts, working its way through his body. It was like hot lava coursing through his veins. How had it happened? He couldn't remember right then. The pain was unbearable. It was eating away at him, and he could not control the shift. No matter how hard he tried, it kept going back and forth. The pain was forcing the shift even as he tried to hold it back, so that he could work his human fingers. He needed them to get the medicine that would kill the pain. But the shift would not stop. It kept coming over him, repeatedly. Then he had found help. A woman had helped him. She was beautiful. She had taken the pain down a lot, and allowed him to keep the shift at bay. She had been frightened, but she had helped him anyway. She had done her best to make sure he was okay, and had taken him to get more help. She was waiting for him. The doctors had put him under sedation, but he still felt it. He was not able to be fully sedated. The pain was awful, as they wrenched the vile slug from his body. Then the shift began to come over him, and his body awoke from the temporary paralysis that it had been in. He could not let them see him this way. He had to hold it back. He tried, but it would not retreat, so he had leapt off the table and ran out of the room and down the hall to the door in the back. He did not see people there. He could not compromise his mission. He could not let them see the shift happen, have them see what he was. He had to retreat. He had burst through the doors, and as he bounced off into the dark night, something grabbed him. He felt a momentary pain in the back of his skull, and then it was all dark. Darkness engulfed him as it did now. There was no light in his new world. But he was not in pain. The pain in his stomach had gone, and the pain in his head had vanished as well. He opened and closed his eyes several times to confirm that he was indeed awake. He had to get out of there. He had a mission to complete. Alex moved sideways, and feeling the soft mattress and springs beneath him, he realized that he was in a bed. Whose bed was he in? Where was he? Had he been abducted? Did they find him? No, if they had found him, he would be dead. He was very much alive, he thought, as he inhaled a huge gulp of air. Alex stumbled out of the bed in the dark and reached around the room looking for a light switch. His shins bumped something hard, and he cried out in pain as he felt the pinch on his skin. He decided that shuffling his feet might work better, which he did as he moved cautiously through the dark. Reaching out with his hands, he suddenly felt the wall beneath him. And then he felt the familiarity of a light switch. He flicked it on, and the room was awash in bright light. His eyes, not able to adjust in time, felt the bright sting in his retinas coursing backwards into his brain. Even with the power of the lion, the eyes could occasionally be shocked, especially after all of the trauma he had been through in the past 24 hours. As his eyes adjusted, he realized that he was in his own room. His room. On Zuha. He was no longer on Earth. What the hell? He muttered to himself at the shocking realization. How the hell had he gotten back home? He was so close to completing his mission. No. Why? He said out loud to the empty room as he slammed his fist against the wall. Those morons have no idea what they've done, Alex muttered. He had to get back to Earth as soon as possible. Alex grabbed his robe and walked out of the room and into the bright hallway. The sunshine was pouring through the windows that lined both sides of the hall. He wished that the doors were similar to the way on Earth, where you could see light coming in under the door. Perhaps that would have woken him up sooner. He also missed the wonderful invention of windows in the bedroom, which his people did not believe in, because it was supposed to be totally dark when one slept. Alex realized more and more how much he had enjoyed his little stay on planet Earth, and how much he was looking forward to visiting there again, but he might have needed a better disguise. Or he might seriously have to understand that him going there ever again was a surefire danger to his life. He had been there less than a day, and had been shot and almost killed. When he came downstairs, he saw several of his assistants sitting around the large table, getting ready to enjoy breakfast. They smiled as he entered the room from the stairs, as if they expected him to sit down. "Hello, King," Beth said. Beth was the first assistant to the king, which as of 1 week ago was Alex. His father, King Francis, had died of heart failure in his sleep. He was a great king, and Alex knew that no matter how well he did in the role, he would never come close to being as good of a leader as his father was. But he had to pretend that he was just as competent, and that he was prepared to rule. His father had groomed him for the part since he was a small boy, and he had tried to learn as best he could, because he realized that no matter what, he was never allowed to get out of the job of king unless he was killed. "Don't greet me so kindly. I want answers," Alex said, standing at the head of the table. His assistants looked down sheepishly as he yelled at them. They knew they had angered him greatly. "My king, we were simply following protocol set forth by your father, King Francis. My father is gone. That means the protocol, and all decisions related to it go through me. I was on a very important and very sensitive mission. I had a reason for being there. You were supposed to be meeting with me to go over the schedule for the upcoming days. The people need to know what changes, if any, you are going to make to your father's most recent laws. You have to instill in them that they are under the leadership of a very capable king. Skipping out and going on some crazy mission does not do any of that. It accomplishes the contrary. I am the king. I know what my responsibilities are, but there are things that I have to do that I can't explain to everybody. If I did, then I would put them in jeopardy. You have to understand that. The people will just have to trust that I am the king now. The people don't just trust that sort of thing. Even though you were given the title of king simply by birth, you have to earn their respect through your actions. You have yet to even get started on that, Beth said as she started her breakfast. It made Alex angry to have one of his underlings speaking to him that way, but he knew that she was right, to a point. I don't have to explain my actions to you, Alex said as he sat down in front of his breakfast. He was suddenly starving and tired of standing. His full-on strength had not yet returned, and he found himself feeling weak and dizzy. He played it off, and did not let on to his subjects that anything was wrong. They would never see their king show any signs of weakness. It is dangerous for you to go anywhere without your guards, and dangerous for you to not tell anyone where you are going. For all we knew, you had been killed, and that would have left us without a king and highly vulnerable to attack. I don't have to report every move to you. And I am capable of taking care of myself. I don't need a crew of bodyguards with me. I was in the army, if you remember. I am a very capable fighter. That must be why we found you wounded and close to death. The damage had been repaired already, and I was just waiting for my body's natural healing defense to kick in. The atmosphere on Earth stunted that mechanism a little bit. But I was fine. Besides, if anything really did happen to me, my brother would take over. His staff looked at each other with fear in their eyes. We would rather that not happen, my king, Aaron said. His voice was soft and humble. He rarely spoke out of turn, but when he did, his words were often powerful. I know that my brother Josh is a bit of a radical, but he is still young. He will grow out of it, and he would be a very effective king one day. Sir, he is only 21 years old. He is a bit of a layabout, and has none of your qualifications or your father's good sense. If he were to lead us at this moment, then we might very well be doomed as a society. I understand all of that, but I was not in any danger I could not handle. It is not your job to dictate to me what my safety measures are. I tell you. And as your king, you had better get used to that. After breakfast, I want you to prepare the cylinder. Sir, you are not seriously going back, Aaron said. Damn right. I was in the middle of a mission that you may have fouled up so bad that it can't be completed. Besides, there is a woman there who needs help. I'm not sure how or why, but she came into my life for a reason and I can't get her out of my mind. Alex had not stopped thinking about Emily. She was so sweet and kind to him. And her beauty was the most astounding thing he had ever laid his eyes on. But there was something else drawing him to her that he could not place. It was a feeling in his gut. He knew that she was in danger. She needed his help. Sir, I must forbid that you take this mission at this time. You have a lot of duties to tend to as king. I'm sure if you send a scouting party, they can complete this mission for you. No. It is mine, and I choose to do it alone. You will have to reschedule my other duties. I will not be held prisoner in my own kingdom. You are being unreasonable. Your father never acted this way. His kingdom always came first. I am not my father. You will quickly learn that about me. I don't bow to ancient doctrines that dictate my duty, and I don't take orders from my staff. After breakfast, you will prepare the cylinder for my mission back to Earth. If you don't hold a press conference today to accept the position of king, then we will have no choice but to have your brother do it and name him king. The other planets in the colonies can't know that the new king has failed to take the reins of leadership of his new kingdom after a week has passed. We have been kingless for 7 days in their eyes. I realize your father's body isn't even cold yet, but you must follow that protocol to keep order in the planet and with the colonies, Beth said. She went back to eating her breakfast. He knew that she was absolutely right, and that he did need to do this for his people, but the longer he waited, the more danger he might place Emily in, and his original mission would fail too. It was clear that he was never going to see the end of this bantering, and that his staff was going to have to force his hand and keep him under their thumb. Was that what his father had to deal with? Was the government really run by a committee that he had little to do with? He didn't think so, but if it was that way, then they were in for a rude awakening, because they had no idea who they were dealing with. He was going to have to try something drastic. Fine. I'll tend to my kingly duties and accept the position in front of the people, but soon I am going back to Earth. But after my other duties have been taken care of, and I can leave my brother to act in my short absence. This seemed to please Beth and Aaron, as they smiled at each other. He could read it in their beady eyes that they had no intention of letting him go back to Earth. If he did, it was going to be under heavy supervision, which would have ruined it all anyway. Alex left the podium and walked back towards the curtain, but not before giving the huge crowd in attendance and the people watching on vision scan around the world a big wave and a smile. He had given his speech that had been carefully prepared for him by his primary speechwriter, which he had memorized while sitting in the makeup chair for 2 hours to make sure his hair and his face were groomed just perfectly. Then he had to be fitted for the king's robe, which was heavy and hot under the warm suns that bore down on him. He was glad both suns were farther away than Earth's one sun, or they would have all been fried in seconds. As he walked back towards the dressing room to finish taking everything off so he could be himself again, the 2 large security men who followed him everywhere now stomped menacingly behind him. Each man had to be 7 feet tall and double his own body weight. And they never said a word. But Alex was sure that they had brains somewhere in their humongous skulls. As they rounded the corner to the dressing room, Alex held up his hand and pointed to the restroom. The men barely grunted as they followed him to the restroom. "I got this one, guys," Alex said as he closed the door behind him. He waited a second to see if they would indeed follow him into the restroom, but they did not. He breathed a sigh of relief and quickly hopped up onto the sink and shimmied his way through the window he had opened before the press conference. A second later, and he was out and on the loose. It felt like a huge weight had just been taken off the top of his head as he rushed along the outside of the corridor and towards the other side of the palace from the Colosseum. He was lucky that everyone was still in the Colosseum watching the end of the press release when he snuck out. It was during the midday eclipse, so he was able to run under the cover of darkness, but this would only last for another 15 minutes. He had to get to the cylinder and quickly prepare it for a trip back to Earth. He only hoped that he would be able to get out of Zuha before anyone noticed he was gone. After that, it would still take him 3 hours to get to Earth. He knew that Emily was in danger, and he had to save her. If it weren't for her, he might very well have died on Earth. She had saved his life. Now it was time for him to save hers. Chapter 6. "And you are serious?" Laura said as she sipped her cafe mocha, after Emily told her the story about Alex. The girl was addicted to those things. It was all she ever ordered when they had lunch at Starbucks, which happened at least 3 times a week. "I know it sounds insane, but for some reason I believe him," Emily said. "What? Did he slip you some drugs or something?" Emily laughed. "No, but there was just something in his eyes. I can't stop thinking about him." "Oh, so that's it. You got a big crush on the man," Laura said, scarfing down some of her kettle chips. Emily tried to concentrate on something else for a few minutes, but Alex was the only thing that had been on her mind since last night. She had not had a chance to get any real sleep, other than the few hours nap she had in those horrid waiting room chairs in the and she was feeling a bit frazzled by everything. She was not sure why she had told Laura about Alex, but it was something that she felt she could not stay quiet about any longer. She had to tell someone or she was surely going to go insane. But she had conveniently left out the part about Alex being some sort of lion-shifting creature. That would have given Laura the absolute wrong idea. "I wouldn't say I have a crush on him. I just noticed he was unbelievably sexy," Emily said. Laura looked at her sharply for several seconds, as if she was trying to figure something out. "What?" Emily asked. "Do I have food on my face or something?" "No, I was just thinking. The reason you never went totally nuts about a guy is because you wanted a man who was wounded, Laura said. What? Emily replied. That's it. You like a man just like you love your animals. You need a man who is just like a wounded puppy that you have to nurture and take care of. I totally get this now, Laura said. Because there is no other way that a crazy man with a gunshot to his stomach who tells you that he is an alien from outer space could capture your heart like that. I know you haven't gone completely insane. Or at least I think I do. Emily could not stifle the laughter as both girls erupted, drawing some strange looks from the others in the cafe. When Laura put it that way, it sounded so ridiculous. It was absurd. Everything about it was completely outside of her nature and the way she interacted with the world, but there was something about him. When she closed her eyes, she was still seeing Alex. There was something about the man that she just could not get over. She couldn't get him out of her mind. And maybe it was because he had been wounded, and she had a driving nature to take care of wounded and sick people. And she had seen that he was part lion, so that might have factored into it in some weird, sick way as well. She just didn't know what to think anymore. She was glad that she had told Laura, and she was certain that Laura would tell the other girls, but she was not going to mention it to any of them again unless they brought it up first, which of course they would, for the next week or so every time she saw them. Yeah, she had started that. But it felt good to just get it out in the open and talk to someone about it. But the feelings were still there. She knew that she wanted to find Alex. If he was still even here. What if he had gone back to his home planet, and she never saw him again? She had so many questions she wanted to ask him about the universe. But most importantly, she wanted to find out if she and he really fit together as well as they did in her head. What was she doing? She was pining for a guy she had met for 30 minutes at the most, and the encounter was beyond bizarre. Did she really see a meaningful future or relationship with someone like that, if she ever did run into him again? She had always prided herself on being much more level-headed than that. She was not one of those girly girls who fell in love right away and wondered if the guy was going to call her and what she was going to say when he did. She just did not care about the social games that people played. Of course, maybe that was why she was single. That was what her girlfriends had always tried to tell her. She was apparently pushing men that she was involved with away. But she just didn't see it that way. But she wanted to find Alex. She needed to find him. Unfortunately, she had no idea where he could be, or even the slightest idea on how to find him. So he was really hot, you say? Laura asked. Emily smiled as she thought about him. Oh yeah. He was the hottest guy I've seen anywhere around here for a long time. Wow, maybe I need to find out how to get to Mars to meet a guy like that. He isn't from Mars, he isn't even from this solar system. I have no idea where his planet Zuha is. Emily had not really been listening to the words that were pouring out of her mouth, or how insane they sounded. But Laura was. She was staring at Emily with her mouth open, and her eyes wide as saucers, as if she had just seen a sweet ghost doing something hilarious behind Emily's back. It took her a second, but Emily was able to replay her words in her mind and realize how stupid it all sounded. Oh my God. I have to go back to work. I can't believe where my head has been, Emily said as she got up to leave. You are okay, sweetie. But you got to get the Tarzan from space out of your mind. Space aliens are no good for you. Laura called as Emily walked away. She looked back and winced with a goofy grin that she could not help. The other patrons were staring, having obviously heard the last remark. Laura had no shame at all. That was why Emily loved her. Emily turned her car onto the highway and began driving to the north side of town. She hated that the only Starbucks was on the other side of town from the animal hospital, but she had to have the stuff. It was addictive, but Laura was definitely more addicted to it than she was. Laura had it at least 2 or 3 times every day without fail, and if she did not get it for just one of those feedings, she was not a happy camper and not exactly easy to be around. Emily turned on her XM radio and listened to some of the old country music that she loved. All of her friends teased her about it, but she loved the oldies. She just did not feel that the new stuff sounded like real country music. It was all pop music with a country flavor, and now it was getting crazy with some groups putting hip-hop and even some techno into it. Emily was a music purist, and she loved the country music from the 60s and 70s best of all. Those songs were all so soulful and magical. Every time she listened to Alabama or the Judds, she got tingles all over as it took her away to another place. Plus, it helped her forget about all of her worries, and it made the drive across town much easier to deal with. But she did have to watch out for the psychotic drivers that terrorized the streets with what they thought was proper operation of a motor vehicle. All of them should have been kept at least 100 yards away from a driver's ed instructor. Someone was following her. Emily's whole body began to seize up as she saw the black car that had been hanging out in her rear view follow her through the third turn in the past 5 minutes, being careful to stay about 2 car lengths back. They were good, but she was apparently just paranoid enough to realize when she was being followed. But why? Who would have been following her? She barely had the thought when the name, Alex, popped into her mind. It had to be him. But why was he following her? He knew where she worked, and it wouldn't have surprised Emily if he already knew where she lived too. He could have just come in and talked to her if he wanted to tell her thanks for saving his life, and not telling anybody about the fact that he was an alien. Maybe he was not from the area and wasn't sure how to get back to the animal hospital. The roads around there could be really confusing if you were not used to them. It was all flat streets with wide lanes and smooth pavements. It was easy to get lost when one street and one neighborhood looked just like the other streets and neighborhoods. The area had undergone rapid expansion early in its development, and so a lot of it did look alike. Easy for an out-of-towner to get mixed up. But he had found her, hadn't he? How had he found her? It was possible that he simply got lucky. Somehow she just didn't think so. Maybe he had a way of tracking people, or he had a better memory than the average human being. She was tired of trying to figure him out. She just wanted to get to the animal hospital and talk to him finally. Her head had been spinning around with insane thoughts and musings ever since she had met him. Emily turned the corner and slowed the car down to the parking lot of the clinic. She parked in her usual spot and stepped out of her car, expecting the car behind her to simply pull in and park in the empty space beside her. The car slowed down, and she could see it was a dark black SUV with tinted windows. The windows were so dark she wondered if they were even legal. She squinted her eyes, trying to peer into the car to see who was behind the wheel. She was starting to suspect that this might not be Alex after all. The car appeared to be turning into the parking lot, but it lurched forward suddenly and sped off down the road, almost cutting off another car that was driving in the other lane. Emily watched as the SUV spun around a corner at speed, and was surprised when the thing did not flip over. "What the hell?" she muttered to herself as she walked towards the door of her place of business. She had been certain that it was Alex in that car. Her heart sank at the realization. Laura was right, she did have it bad for him. Every time she tried to think about something else, his beautiful face popped back into her mind. Oh, those eyes. They were so piercing that when she thought about them, she felt like she was going to just melt right into the ground beneath her feet. She would never tell anyone else how she felt, but Laura had read right through her because she knew Emily so damn well. That was the downside to having a friend like Laura, who seemed to be able to read any person within seconds. That was probably why she had always been the life of the party wherever they went, and Emily had faded back into the background a bit. She had just never been able to get a good read on people right away, but she could with animals. That was probably another reason why she had become a vet instead of a doctor. As she entered the building, she couldn't help but smile at the smell and the sights of the day-to-day operation of the vet clinic. She usually went out and got food for everybody, But today, she and Laura decided that they had to have one of their secret hangouts at Starbucks. The rest of the staff understood, and it appeared that they had taken advantage of the Pizza Hut Friday special and had a great time without her. "Wow, that looks good," Emily said with a smile as she walked past the front desk and saw Cheryl scarfing down the last bites of a slice. She could swear that her coworkers were doing everything in their power to wreck the good diet progress she had made recently. They were all young and slim and had no idea what it was like to even put on a couple of ounces. But they would get there after they left college and hit the real world. Emily had to smile at the disaster awaiting them. Not that she wished any of them harm, she loved them to death, but she occasionally wished that they were not all younger than her. "It is good," Cheryl replied, wolfing it down and then taking a big gulp of soda. Then she had the audacity to give Emily a thumbs up to rub it in her face. "That's very funny, Cheryl." "Yeah, that is very mature," Emily said, laughing. She loved her staff so much, and she could not imagine ever working with anyone else. If she could only find an office manager who fit in and was this cool to hang with. Most office managers seemed to be fussy and uptight, which probably made them good at organization and managing things. Emily hated reminding herself of that, but she knew that she might have to bite the bullet and just hire a qualified person to manage the office so she could actually enjoy her evenings. Besides, it would be a fun thing for her and the other girls to have someone to team hate in person. "That is going to catch up with you one day, and you are going to be so fat." "I can't wait," Emily said as she walked past the desk and started down the hall to her office. "I can't wait. I'm tired of being cold," Cheryl said. "How can you be cold when we don't even get fall or winter weather here?" Emily asked. "Oh, you'd be surprised, but I'm always cold. That's why I need to fatten up." Emily could hear the girl running to the break room to open up another box of pizza. There were only 4 people who worked there besides her, and they were all girls, but they somehow managed to eat 6 large pizzas every Friday. That was considered pizza day. Emily thought it was lame to designate a day for a particular kind of food. Or was she just angry once again that she had trapped herself in this low-carb prison and wanted to kill everyone around her now? She went to her office, grabbed her jacket, and got ready to start seeing her afternoon patients. She heard Cheryl unlock the front door. Within 5 minutes, she had a waiting room full of patients. She wondered why she scheduled so many appointments at the same time. She always had to make people and their pets wait, and it always took her longer to fully examine one of her patients than she had scheduled. She hated when doctors did that to her, but she did the same thing to her patients. That was something that she was going to work on. As she went through her busy afternoon rounds, she tried not to think about Alex at all, and for the most part she was actually succeeding. But every now and then the man would creep into her mind, and she would feel almost as if he was standing right beside her. She had to turn her head and check a few times, just to make sure that she was only daydreaming. Her patients didn't seem to notice, as the little fur balls wagged their tails and tried to be adorable for her. They were all so sweet that they just wanted to be loved and played with, even when she had to do unpleasant things like take their temperature. Today, all of the owners had enough developed insight to realize that dogs and cats don't like that, and it might be a good idea to hold their heads so that she didn't get bitten, like she had so many times before. It happened at least once or twice a month, it seemed. She usually remembered to tell people if they did not look all that sharp, but sometimes she forgot if it was a busy day or she had her mind somewhere else. After she finished with her last patient, she relaxed for a few minutes in her office and checked her emails while the other girls finished tidying up for the day. It was just her and Cheryl in the office towards the end, and Emily felt her energy waning. She had not slept much last night, and after all of the crap she had dealt with, she just wanted to go home and sleep all night. That would put everything right, and probably get Alex out of her mind, so she was finally able to think clearly on the matter. After finishing her notes on each patient that she kept meticulously for her records, sometimes she felt like an animal psychiatrist, and saved them in the computer, she decided to check the inventory of the pain meds and make sure that they still had enough for the rest of the month after Alex had destroyed several bottles last night. There it was again, Alex. She could not get the man off her mind. She wondered how long it would take before she could go a day without thinking of him. Even though she had met him last night, the way she felt was starting to feel like infatuation. But she couldn't let that happen. Not with a guy who was so troubled that he told her he was from another planet. He had basically wasted 4 bottles of heavy narcotic pain medications. Most of them had scattered on the floor, and she'd swept them up and thrown them out because they were squashed into powder form. That was the great thing about having animals for pets. You didn't have to worry about an inspector reporting you for feeding them pills that were on the floor. They tended to be a bit laxer when it came to the canine or the feline medication. She heard the gurgling sound very faintly at first, and she almost thought that Cheryl had her little desk fan turned on, and was holding it up to her face again and talking into it. The girl was such a kid sometimes. She was probably never going to grow up, which is why she reminded her so much of Amber. Those two could have been sisters, they were so much alike, but that was probably why she liked them both so much, they were just so much fun. Truthfully, if she had to admit it to herself, they reminded her of a time in her life when everything seemed so much more magical, and she had not turned into such a constant worrier, always living in her own head instead of the real world. Emily felt that during college, she had made great strides in that department though, and she was far more outgoing and fun-loving than she used to be. But if she asked her friends, she knew they would say that since she had taken over the animal hospital, she had become much more withdrawn and insecure about everything. She would have to agree with that and say they were absolutely right, but she was working things out in her own sweet time and her own sweet way. In fact, she was thinking about working things out later tonight with a bunch of ice cream and junk food. Yep, she was definitely going on a snack run. This stupid diet had been hard, and she was sick of it. As she closed a bottle and placed it in the cabinet, she suddenly heard the gurgling sound echoing throughout the building at a much higher volume. Emily
censored
her head to the side and held her ear out to listen to the sound to see where in the hell it was coming from. It sounded like it could have been coming from outside, or it was something playing faintly on the television in the waiting room. There was something darker about it. It sounded more urgent somehow, and it sounded like it was closer than the television. It was definitely Cheryl. Was she playing a gag, or watching some stupid YouTube videos? Emily had taken several steps across the room, and her hands were now opening the door that separated her from the other side. She liked to have that separation between herself and the others when she was with patients. She was not exactly sure why. It might have been that she loved to see people with their pets in as much quiet as possible. Sometimes her patients' masters were quite upset about the condition of their pets, and if she could have as much quiet in the back provided for them as she could, then that made it all a bit better to deal with. Or maybe she secretly hated her staff and could only take so much of their non-stop perkiness. She doubted that, but the perky thing was a bit annoying at times. Life was not that great that you had to be so happy all the time. But she was aware that she acted the same way at times because she loved her job so much, and now she could add to it that she discovered Alex, and if she talked about him as much as she thought about him, she would definitely drive everyone around her batshit crazy. A loud thud rang in her ears just then, and she froze in place waiting for the sound to be repeated, but scared to death that it might be. There was an ominous feeling that was now coming over her. It was like an intruder into her mind and her daily conscious reality that was not supposed to be there, but she could not quite see it yet and decipher what it was doing there or what it was. But it was there, and she could feel it as if it was standing right beside her, knocking on the thin door that separated her from the thing on the other side. Through the delicate silence that was amplified since Emily had held her breath for the last 3 seconds, she could clearly make out the sounds of a human voice trying to yell in terror and pain, but failing to do so. The image flashing through her mind was one of total terror. She knew that she had to see what was going on, but every thought in her head was telling her to run out the back door. She had to run to her car and start driving, and then she would call the police. They would handle everything. She did not have to take it upon herself to be a hero. Her curiosity could wait. But she was already walking closer to the front room. In mere seconds, she would be around the corner, and her eyes would be full of whatever was happening to her friend and coworker. She did not want to see anything there at all. She just wanted everything to go back to the boring little world that she constantly complained about, but would never in a million years want to leave. She just needed to have that peace of mind again. That was all she had ever really wanted. She didn't need a man. She did not need this enigmatic stranger who had walked into her life and turned her entire world upside down. She could not think straight. Emily knew that Cheryl was in trouble, and there was no way that the cops would get there in time to help her. It might have already been too late, but she had to try. The terror she was experiencing was unlike anything she had ever known before, but somehow she managed to separate her feelings and thoughts apart from each other. She was not going to let her emotions stop her from helping Cheryl if she was able to at all. Emily took a huge breath and turned the corner. Cheryl was alone. Her body was lying on the floor as the gurgling sounds sprung forth out of her motionless body. Emily was having difficulty with discerning how that noise could come from a seemingly unconscious body. Her body sprang into action before her mind could formulate conscious thoughts of what was happening and what she needed to do. She did not even notice that the front door was wide open, right in front of Cheryl. Emily put her ear to Cherry's heart and listened while holding her own breath to zone in on only the sounds coming from Cheryl's body. She could hear the heart beating, but it was growing faint. Her breaths were coming in slow and unsteady. Each breath sounded like it had been split up into a bunch of choppy micro-breaths. Cheryl was dying. Something was lowering her heartbeat and interrupting her pattern of breathing, and her brain function seemed to be lessening as well. Emily grabbed the phone out of her pocket and began to dial 911. She no sooner placed the phone in her hand than a loud boom rocked her world as the wall next to her exploded under the force of the blast. She quickly saw a flash of movement coming through the doorway. It was the biggest-looking gun she had ever seen, and there was a stranger wearing all black right behind it. She did not try to catch a good glimpse of who it might be, or if she even recognized them. Instead, she jumped back from the blast, landing flat on her back and then reversing down the hallway so she would be out of the direct line of fire. Her head moved from the spot on the floor a split second before that space exploded behind her. She barely contemplated the fact that her entire head had almost become cottage cheese right then, and she jumped to her feet into a mad dash, run down the hall and into the back room, closing the door behind her. She knew that the pathetic wooden door would do nothing to deter this full-scale assault, but it might buy her a second or two. At least it gave her some peace of mind, she thought as she hid under the counter. She had to think. There had to be another way out of here, but she knew that there wasn't another exit. Still, she had to find a way. She had to invent some way to get out of here. Aagg. The scream came from behind her, muffled through the wall, but still loud enough to transmit the fact that something awful had just happened to the man who was shooting at her. His voice quickly disappeared. His scream had been cut right in half, and now he was gurgling similar to Cheryl. Cheryl. She was a goner. Emily had to dial for some help, but she had to preserve her own safety first. That is what they taught anyone who is attempting to help someone else. If you are not safe, then the person you are helping is not going to be. It is just going to be two people that need rescuing, instead of one. The door burst open right then. Emily held her breath as she waited for the end to come. She was going to be instantly discovered under the counter, she knew it. But she was going to fight like hell, whoever was trying to take her life if she could. She took a huge deep breath and held it for a second before slowly releasing it, feeling every single cell in her body relaxing for a second and rebounding, ready to fight. Emily was ready. Emily? The voice sounded familiar. It was not threatening. It was low and guttural, but it sounded like a friendly whisper. Emily was ready to leap out and begin fighting with everything she had. She knew that it was futile and she would probably be killed instantly, but she was not the kind to go out of this world without a fight. Maybe she could get at least one good shot in on this bastard and die a happy woman. But she did not want to fight this voice. She was not quite able to place it, but she knew it was a friendly voice. It was soft and sweet despite being thick and somber. Emily peeked out from under the table, just enough to get a visual of who the voice belonged to. She could not see anything except jeans and flannel until the person moved, crossing the room as if hoping she would magically appear on the wall. It was Alex. She couldn't believe her eyes, and was convinced that they had to be playing tricks on her. She had often heard that in the moments before death, the mind begins to relive all of the beautiful moments of one's life, and that even at death it releases something that makes the death experience much more comforting and easier to handle. Was this it? Was that what she was seeing right now, or was Alex actually here? Emily? Alex called again a second before he spotted her crouched on the ground under the counter. Alex? Emily whispered, almost too loudly. He reached out and grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet, as she fell instantly into his arms. It was impossible for him to be here. But here he was, his hair, his skin, his sweet face and strong arms. How was it so easy for her to feel this way with someone she had only met twice? She was aware of how little sense this made, but she just didn't care. She just wanted to stay there with him as long as she could. As Emily held Alex, she began to realize that she had been not just thinking about Alex since she had met him, but she had been wanting him and needing him too. There was something missing in her life that she never really understood before, until he was there. If she had been asked to describe it, she would not have been able to put it into words or say that she understood it in the slightest, but she could feel it, and she could feel that she needed it. She had been missing it for so long, and now it was here. Where did? Emily started, but Alex quickly clamped a big strong hand over her mouth to cut out the sound. Shush! He whispered in her ear. There is more of them here. What? Emily said, her voice just above a hush. Who is it? The government agency who regulates the quarantine, capture and extermination of all non-Earth organisms. Emily had heard of this group, but she had always assumed it was the stuff of Hollywood imaginations and science fiction novels. She had heard about Area 51 and everything else that the government supposedly kept secret, but she had never believed in aliens, let alone that the government was really keeping this information a secret from the people. How many are here? Emily asked, clutching onto Alex's arm. I don't know, but we have to find a way out of here. We are severely outnumbered. Emily racked her brain trying to come up with a solution, but she was stumped. There was simply no way. The ceiling. Yes, the ceiling tiles. They might be able to crawl through those tiles to get to the empty lounge down the hall, where there was a window, and they could escape that way. They could not get to it now, because the hallway was blocked. She could hear the footsteps coming closer, but she could not count how many there were. But if Alex was scared, then so was she. She had not seen what had happened to the other man in the hallway, and she was not so sure she wanted to. If Alex had gone all lion on him and ripped him a new one, then she was going to live with the fact that he had saved her life, but she did not need to see it. Emily pointed excitedly to the ceiling. Alex smiled, instantly getting the plan. He hoisted her up so that she could remove a tile, and then he pushed her body up through the opening where she finished hoisting herself into the ceiling. She considered giving him a hand to help him up, but his weight probably would have just pulled her down to the floor. Besides, he had all of the strength and skill he needed. Alex jumped up into the hole, and was right behind her within seconds. She knew that they had to move fast, because she doubted that the ceiling tiles were meant to hold so much weight, and she had no idea how long it was going to hold out. Emily quickly moved along as fast as she could, from one tile to another. With each press of her weight onto another tile, she had a mini heart attack as she felt it giving way beneath her, but nothing crashed. If they crashed or fell through the tiles, she knew that they would be killed. They had no idea of where exactly these men were. Were they men? She had not stopped to ask herself that question. They were part of a government agency, but what if they were recruited from other worlds? What if they were cloned somehow by the aliens that had indeed landed in Roswell all of those years ago? Maybe they had been recycled and used for hundreds of intelligence missions and voyages to other worlds. What else was the government not telling them? Emily could hear the men moving around beneath them as they went from room to room, opening doors, knocking over supplies, and generally ransacking her place of work that she loved dearly. She could also hear the beautiful animals in her care going nuts, and she hoped that nothing happened to them. She tried to put the thought out of her mind as she moved. She stopped about 4 tiles away from the end. As she looked at Alex, she nodded, indicating that she believed they were in the right place. But she honestly was not totally sure. Now, how the hell were they going to get down without arousing suspicion? That was the question. Emily hadn't thought that far ahead, but she was happy to have gotten them this far. Before she could ask Alex what he was going to do, he slid the tile between them over and pushed it behind him. Then he whipped his body weight around and leapt down to the floor with the stealth of a ninja master. He did not make a sound. "Jump," Alex whispered to Emily. She closed her eyes and leapt down through the hole. She expected to hit the ground and radiate noise everywhere to alert them where they were, but she landed safely in Alex's arms. He lowered her to the ground gently. Emily had to admit that was a lot of fun, and it was always a pleasure to be in Alex's arms. "The window," Emily said as she rushed over to open it. The window was stuck a bit, and she found herself grunting to push it up. Alex lent a hand, and the window slid open easily. Emily began to crawl through the window. Suddenly the door burst open, and Emily saw a man in a black suit and tie with another one of those humongous assault rifles. "Here!" he yelled as he opened fire. Alex pushed Emily out of the window as he transformed into the lion and roared to life. The bullet hit the wall where Emily's head would have been if Alex had not pushed her. Emily fell to the ground hard, knocking the wind out of her body, as the deafening explosion spread out right above her head. She lay on the ground for a few seconds, trying to gasp the wind back into her lungs, but failing miserably. Finally, she forced her body to wobble to its feet while still crouching down. She had to get to her car. Emily squatted as low to the ground as she could, as she heard the fighting raging on just feet behind her in the animal hospital. Her car was still in the driveway unharmed. That was a flipping miracle. She made it to the car, opened the door, and slid into the driver's seat. She flipped the ignition and tried to start it up. The car was dead. It didn't even try to roll over. It was as if her battery was dead. Or the battery was destroyed. That was more like it. Damn. What was she going to do? She had to go back and help Alex if possible. It was very likely that he was about to be killed. There were too many of them. He couldn't possibly fight them all. Suddenly, Emily saw a man's body flying out of the window and hit the ground with a sickening thud. His body was followed by a lion-human hybrid, leaping from the window and hitting the ground as it broke into a full run. Emily had never seen anyone or anything move that fast. Suddenly, the door to her car was open, and she was several feet from it, riding on the back of the lion as it sped to a truck parked across the street. The lion opened the door to the truck, sliding her inside, her body now resting comfortably in the passenger seat, and the lion had transformed into a very
censored
Alex. The keys were dangling from the ignition already, as he flipped the switch and the truck roared to life. A second later, they were speeding down the road, with 2 of the men in dark black suits running across the parking lot looking very angry and annoyed. Their guns were still raised high. They quickly tried to hide them in their coats the best they could, and ran back towards the black SUV that was parked in front of the animal hospital. "What the hell was that?" Emily asked after a few minutes. Her breath had finally returned, and she was able to take several gulps of air while trying to process the situation and hoping that some endorphins were being released to quell some of the pain she was feeling in her body. She definitely felt like her rib cage had been shifted somehow, and when she did breathe in deeply, she felt a sharp pain at the top. She had never experienced a broken bone before, and she was not sure what to expect. Hopefully, it was nothing. Like I said, that was a government agency. Yeah, I heard all of that. I can put two and two together. But why are they after me? Why did they kill my friend and destroy the animal hospital? Because of me. I'm sorry. What do you mean, because of you? Emily asked. They somehow got wind that I was here and that I made contact with you. How the hell did that happen? How did they know that I saw you, or that you told me anything? I don't know. Have you told anyone about me? Anyone at all? I jokingly told the cop at the hospital what you told me, but there is no way in hell he believed a word of it. I never thought he would, so I made it out like a joke. That was it then. What? How? He must have written it in his report. What? No way. Like I said, he thought I was feeding him a line, and he gave me a nasty look before he ignored it completely, Emily said. Nevertheless, he put it in the report. Maybe he is just that thorough, or he thought it was funny enough to have on a permanent record. How the hell do you know so much about the police here? We've studied your planet for years. Our people have been here before you. What? How long ago? Thousands of years, Alex replied. Emily checked the rear, but did not see any signs of the SUV following them. There was practically no traffic at all on the street, which was rare. There were not a lot of things that happened in Buckeye, but there were always young people getting into some sort of trouble, or at least packing up their cars to ride into the city. They aren't following us, Alex said. What? How do you know? Because I dismantled their car before I went into the building. I knew they would do that to you, so I figured that I didn't want them following us in my truck. Good thinking. I'm surprised that they didn't see you. Or were they just so laser-focused on me and my innocent coworker that they didn't want to waste time with the actual alien they are after? I've had a bit of experience hiding from the authorities. On several planets, Alex said. How many planets have you been to? How is it possible that your technology is so much more advanced than ours? Emily asked. We are a much older race than you, Alex replied. How is that possible? Because our planet formed millions of years before yours did. You live in an infantile solar system. It is a baby in the grand scheme of the cosmos. I'm just trying to figure this out. It really is making me a bit dizzy. You are basically challenging everything that I've ever believed about anything scientific right now. As a woman of science, it is freaking me out, Emily said. Sorry, that isn't my intention. But you asked, Alex said with a smile. Emily dropped her gaze and caught a solid glance at his crotch. She instantly felt embarrassed and looked away, trying to pretend that she had not seen it. But she had. It was perfect looking. She would probably have that image burned in her mind for days. The skin on her face was feeling hot and flushed as she felt the blush coming on. She tried to hold it back and not give it away, but it was determined to betray her true feelings. It's okay, you can look, Alex said, smiling at her. I'm not looking. That was an accident. I'm sorry, Emily said. She now felt more embarrassed and a bit stupid. What were you supposed to say in this situation? Don't be. It's just a
censored
body. Everyone looks fairly much the same without their clothes on, except for minor differences. There is nothing to be ashamed about. Well, here on this planet we do get ashamed about that sort of thing. Only in this country, Alex added. In many European countries, they are much more open about nudity and sexuality. How the hell do you know that? Have you been all over my planet? A good bit of it, yes. Why? Just curious? Are you doing some research for a book you are writing? You know, a thanks might do the trick, Alex said. A what? A thanks for saving your life back there. Oh well, thanks. I do appreciate that, but I saved yours last night. So we are even, right? I suppose we are, Alex said. So where are we going? Well, we need to get off the radar, so I thought we would go to a hotel for the night. We can't go anywhere that the government might locate us. Well, shit. I have to make a phone call, Emily said. Who are you calling? Well, not that it's any of your business, but I have to call my neighbor Kathy and ask her to take my dog for a few days. Unless you don't think that is safe. No, that's fine. I know you are really upset and you feel like everything is crazy right now, but trust me, it will get better. I'm glad you are so positive, Emily said. She quickly made the phone call and made up an excuse about a sick friend. She knew that in a few days what happened at the animal hospital would be all over the news, and she would have to explain herself. She would probably be a fugitive from justice. They might even think that she killed Cheryl. How had her life turned into such a mess so damn fast? So what is the plan after we lay low for tonight? Well, I hate to take you with me, but I don't have a choice since they are after you too. I have to go to Russia. Why? Well, actually I have to go to the mountains of Siberia. Are you nuts? You are going to Siberia when the government wants you dead? Well, I guess that government doesn't want you dead, but it just seems like a weird time to be planning a trip. I don't want to tell you any more than I have to. The more I tell you, then the more danger you are going to be in. You just have to trust me on this, Alex said. Emily did trust Alex. And that was starting to terrify her. Chapter 7. I want to know, Emily said. What? Alex replied. I want to know. I want to know who shot you. I want to know why you are going all the way to a mountain in Siberia. I think I deserve to know. The two of them were lying on the bed in the hotel, trying to get some sleep, but neither having much success in the matter. No words had been spoken for about 20 minutes, and Emily was enjoying the silence, but the noise in her head was threatening to destroy all of that. She had too many questions, and they were going to keep her awake until she got them answered. I can't, Alex said. And I told you why. That is not acceptable. I saved your life. You owe me. I saved your life, we are even now. We already went over this. You have made me well aware of the risks and dangers involved in me knowing about everything that is going on, and I've come to accept it. I accept that challenge. It's my life and I will decide what danger I deal with. Alex breathed a long sigh. He looked at her with those steel-cold eyes, but he still didn't speak. It was as if he was gathering his thoughts or trying to package the details in a way that she would understand. I'm waiting. Just hit me with it. I'm a big girl, I can handle myself, Emily said. She was getting rather irritated by the lack of faith that she would be able to handle knowing about Alex. Or maybe he was just one of those people who love to keep things secret from everyone around them, to try to make themselves seem special. She hated those people. Okay. I'm going to Siberia to dig up a device called the Seplica. What the hell is that? Emily asked. It's a device that can transform the lions on Earth into lion hybrids like me. It will change them back to who they used to be before they got stranded here and trapped within their permanent lion form. So you are saying that the lions on the Earth are not supposed to be here, and they are like you? Emily asked. Yes. How did they get that way? Their ship crash landed here thousands of years ago. They were in their computer-induced dream state, but they remained stuck there when the ship crashed. They were left without the ability to shift or even to reason like a person. They are, in a sense, still half asleep. This will bring them back, and we can bring them home. So why is this Seplica thing here? My grandfather Niles came here to hide the Seplica, but he was discovered by the government and was not able to complete his mission. Luckily, he decided to hide the replica where it would never be disturbed and return back home to gather more forces. He was warned not to go on this mission because our people needed their king. We were involved in a war with some neighboring planets. Why did your grandfather want to hide the replica? Because if it was discovered by our enemies, then they could use it to take away our ability to shift, and then we would have been at a severe disadvantage. Your ability to fight is dependent on the shift? I imagine your weapons are pretty advanced. They can be, but in my solar system using weapons to fight is considered to be barbaric and not a proper way of doing combat. We fight in close quarters for the most part. It is a free-for-all. Having the shift strongly enhances our ability to fight. I see. It is so different than here. I have no idea why you would even want to study us in the first place, Emily said. We enjoy studying lots of different worlds and the aliens there. We love Earth because you are biologically very similar to us. Our human side is the same as yours. We just have the added benefit of the shift. It might be because we are about the same distance from our sun as you are from yours. Wow, this is all so fascinating, Emily said. She locked eyes with Alex right then. He had the most gorgeous eyes she had ever become entranced inside of. When she looked into them, it was like the sea was parting and just waiting for her to walk through the waters. Alex was still
censored.
He seemed to prefer it to being clothed, and the way he said it, he felt that she had already seen him, so he had nothing to hide. He didn't seem to care that it made her a bit nervous. But maybe he knew that she was only nervous because she was so turned on. Did he want to turn her on? Was he just trying to tell her that it was inevitable that they would be together? She wanted to reach out and grab his long, thick member so badly, but she knew that she couldn't. It felt so right, but she knew that it was wrong. She could not get the thought out of her head. Her eyes kept dropping from his, just enough that she could see it out of the corner of her eye. The sheet had been peeled back from his long, well-muscled body. His thick tool lay back lazily against his hard, chiseled abs. Emily had never seen a man with a more perfectly proportioned physique. It's okay, Alex said as he smiled at her. What? You can touch it. Don't let anything hold you back, Emily. Alex's voice was soft and deep. It was thick just like the rest of him, and Emily found that her entire body was getting warm at the very thought of touching him. He wanted her to do it. She wanted to do it. So why was she not doing it? She could feel herself getting so moist. Her sweetness was getting ready, and she had to resist the urge to touch herself also. Alex grabbed her hand gently and moved it onto his growing stiff member. Her hand was now wrapped around it, feeling it tighten and thicken within her grasp. She was feeling a bit faint as the blood rushed to her head. Emily began to compulsively lick her lips. She wanted to wrap her mouth around it. She wanted to feel it pulsating within her. She knew that she had been thinking about and dreaming about this moment since the first time that she saw Alex. There was something so primal and animalistic about him. Was it because he was a shifter? Or was it just because he was him? Emily really was not sure what it was that was drawing her so hard to this man. She wanted him so badly. She just needed him deep inside of her, and he was saying yes. Every fiber in her body was saying yes. Why was she not allowing herself to move forward? Was she just nervous? It had been a long time for her. Maybe it was because this was something she wanted to be special and amazing, and she was afraid that it would not be as good as it had been in her mind the past 24 hours. Would Alex not like her? Would she be disappointing to him? As all of these thoughts flashed through her mind, she found herself almost shaking. There was too much pressure. She just didn't know what she was supposed to do here.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
After it was over, Emily closed her eyes, and sleep came easily. Chapter 8. Emily opened her eyes, to a brightly lit room. The sun was shining through the thin curtains, making the whole place look and feel like a tanning bed. She clasped her hands over her eyes as she rolled over to bury her face in the pillow, and try to achieve the illusion of some sweet darkness. Her body was sore and aching. She had not run, crouched, or moved that fast in a long time, and she was starting to think that she really needed to crank up the intensity of her morning runs. And the frequency, which for the past 6 months had gone from once a day to once every 3 days and from 5 miles to 1 mile. It was hard to keep that intensity up, but she was now feeling it. As she closed her eyes tightly and tried to burrow her face farther into the pillow, she picked up the masculine scent of Alex lying beside her. She could not resist reaching out with her hand and laying her arm across his broad torso. He was still nude, the sheet mostly fallen off his body, and she could happily feel the tight bed of muscles that lined his abdomen cradled beneath her hand. Last night had been amazing. The way that he fit inside of her, and the strange way their very lives seemed to fit together, was like something that she just could not explain. It was one of those things that you never really knew you wanted until it was in your life, and then you wondered how in the world you ever lived a day without it. The experience was still tripping her mind out as she tried to make sense of it. She had an overwhelming urge to scream it from the rooftops how much she felt for Alex and how happy she was now. Even though there was a government agency trying to kill them. That was putting a damper on things, but somehow having him by her side made it all okay and worthwhile. She found that when she really thought about it, she was glad this had happened since it had brought them closer together. She knew it was maddening to think such a thing, but she really did not care. And she did not care what anyone thought about it either. She knew how crazy her friends would say this was if they knew the half of it, but she was okay with it all. She was okay with everything. Emily was almost back to sleep when Alex shook her awake. She groaned and opened her eyes, waiting for the sleepy blur to move out of her eyes so she could adjust her eyesight to the real world around her. She had been having such a sweet time, about to drift off to sleep. It had been some time since she had felt so tired and so lazy. It was possible that the crash from the adrenaline that had coursed through her system for most of the previous evening had now emptied its reserves, and she was left with what could only be described as the mother of all sugar crashes. Her body felt like a huge weight that did not want to comply with any demands that indicated movement. As her eyes adjusted, and the light began to eat away at the dark that had surrounded her a moment ago, she began to see Alex's beautiful, nude body standing in front of her. The rippling muscles, the golden tan skin, the delicious flesh rod that stood at half-mast right in front of her face, it was all too irresistible. Without even realizing it, she found herself reaching for it, but Alex caught her hand in midair. He smiled at her and then smacked her on the ass. "You've had enough of that for a while. We don't have time, we have to go." Emily groaned as she rolled over and out from under the sheet that had been rocking softly against her skin, with assistance from the air conditioning. The cool air invaded every open pore of her body and brushed against the dampness between her legs. She wanted more of Alex inside of her this morning, but he apparently had other ideas. The way he was able to restrain himself turned her on more and more. Now she was going to spend the entire day horny and bothered. She would have to find another time to wear him down. As she took a quick shower, she was surprised at her own
censored
drive. It had been awakened on a vicious level, and now all she was able to think about was getting Alex back inside of her at any moment that she could. It was like a life-altering experience, somehow, and she was starting to remind herself of Laura or Ellie. She had never been a horn dog like those two were, and she had prided herself on the fact that she had other things on her mind. Maybe it was just because it was so good and so new and so exciting. That was a recipe for a total crush that could borderline on obsession from time to time. She had watched Dr. Phil enough to know that it was a real thing, but she was fine. She was just a woman who was falling in love, and she was finally on the verge of being totally free and happy. If they could complete Alex's mission without getting killed. After a quick breakfast, they hit the road, heading to the airport. Alex had already booked the tickets while she was still asleep, and he had arranged for a man in Siberia to take him to the site where his grandfather had buried the sepulchre. Emily was not sure she fully understood the exact importance of the device, but Alex had already told her enough about it that she didn't want to bother him anymore to explain it to her. The man was under enough stress, and she wanted to let him stay focused on the task at hand, which involved keeping them alive. Emily had never flown out of the country before, and she was excited to see the other side of the world. She had never had much wanderlust in her life, and had never really thought much about traveling the globe anytime soon. She figured maybe one day, when she had a family, she might be interested in doing something like that, but she had always been very happy living in her little bubble with her close group of friends and being close to home. If Emily had to admit it to herself, she would say that she never really even liked to leave her house that much, except for work, but that was just a few blocks away. And she still hated the commute. But she was looking forward to this trip. She just hoped that they were able to make it where they needed to go without alerting any of the agencies and groups who were looking for them. She was still trying to understand how there were that many people who were trying to destroy Alex simply because he was an alien. That sort of thing terrified people, and they automatically assumed the worst. They figured if the alien race was that much more advanced than they were, then they were going to use that power for evil and to gain even more power. While Alex had told her how there were alien races that were that way, most of them were just curious about their neighbors in the universe. They made it to the airport and began the trek towards reaching their flight. It was at this moment that Emily realized that she did not have a passport. How was she going to fly internationally without a passport? Had Alex even thought about that? Was he even concerned that this might hold them up just a slight bit? Alex, we don't have passports, Emily said through clenched teeth, trying to be coy and not arouse any suspicion. It's okay, Alex said as he reached into his backpack and handed her a passport wallet. Inside was a perfect government-issued passport for her. How did you get this? Emily asked. Alex smiled. It pays to know the right people. Emily shook her head. This was just another one of the little annoying secrets that Alex liked to keep inside of his brain. That was fine. She figured she would find them all out eventually, and she was okay with waiting until then. Emily wasn't sure if this annoyed her or if it totally turned her on. She supposed that it really did a bit of both. She had noticed that about her feelings for Alex. Her feelings of
censored
and want were deeply intermingled with her feelings of self-doubt and annoyance at Alex. Miraculously, they made it aboard the plane and took their seats, much to Emily's shock and awe. She was sweating profusely walking through the airport and through security even. She wasn't sure why she was so scared about security, but it just seemed odd with all of the things they had already been through that they were going to be scrutinized and have to pass for normal. She kept waiting for that dreaded buzzer to start going off and alert the entire airport that they were not who they said they were. As they walked through the airport, Emily kept trying to keep her head forward and not pay attention to the people around her. She was terrified that someone was going to recognize them, and they would have to fight for their lives once again. Surely they could make it through all of this unscathed, and just make it to their plane without any problems. Was that too much to ask? Alex was cool as a cucumber, though. He acted like he had been through an earthly airport a dozen times. He seemed to be enjoying the fact that every woman around him was leering at him and eyeing him like he was going to be their next lunch. Emily was beaming with pride to know that he was with her, and that she had been with him in ways those women could only dream about just hours ago. Emily had never really felt like that before. She had never had a guy that all of the other women drooled over. She had never been popular enough, or in enough activities, or the right clique, or just the flavor of the month during her high school and college years. She wanted to grab Alex and
censored
him to let everyone know that she was his, but she knew that would draw attention. Right now they just wanted to slip right under the radar and be on their merry way. She could relax on the plane. The second her ass hit the seat on the plane, Emily sighed a huge breath of relief and sank down into the seat. She was sweating bullets, and she wiped her brow with the back of her blouse, hoping that no one was noticing that she looked like she had just run 10 blocks at full speed. She appeared to be in decent shape, she supposed, but when she was
censored,
she could see the small amount of fat that covered up her muscle tone. Alex slid into his seat beside hers, and she was happy to see that no one was going to be sitting on either side of them. That would have been the last straw, and she was sure that she might have begun to freak out visibly. Even though they were on the plane, Emily did not feel that they were out of the water yet. There could have been members of the Russian mob or the government on the plane. They could have been setting them up, for all she knew. She would not totally rest easy until the mission was done. But then what? Would Alex leave her? Would he be gone once his mission was done? She really did not want to think about those things, but they were pertinent observations and facts. After his mission, would Alex stick around? Did he feel the same way about her that she did about him? How did she feel? Did she love him? Emily felt a twinge in her heart at the thought. She had no idea if that felt like love or if that just felt like connection, and she wasn't at all sure that they were all that different from each other. Emily wanted to believe in true love and that it had finally happened to her, but the scientist part of her brain that she blamed for her never-ending pursuit of rational thought was taking over and pointing out some glaringly obvious points that it was not likely. She wanted to burst into tears and tell Alex how she felt. She wanted to tell him that she was falling in love with him, and she wanted to tell him that she did not want him to go anywhere after his mission was over, but she knew that it was dangerous for him here. Even when he completed the mission, the mob and the government would still be chasing him and trying to take his world away. They were threatened by who he was and by what he was going to do. It directly conflicted with the way of life of most of them. But that was only because of the lack of understanding, and the fact that they were terrified that it might somehow force them to relinquish some of the power that they had. Alex did not say much during the first part of the plane ride. He just sat beside her, holding her hand softly in his and letting her rest her tired head on his strong shoulder while he read. It was still amazing to her how he could do so many normal earthly things without thinking about them, and how he was able to appear completely normal and not raise suspicion to anyone about anything. If she had found herself on his planet, she would not have survived 2 minutes before everyone knew that she was different, and that she had no idea how to get along and survive there. But his planet had been studying Earth for many years, and he had probably been watching and observing them for quite some time. He knew that one day he would come to this planet, and that he would continue his grandfather's legacy. That must have been a heavy burden to hold on to in your soul as a young child. But she did not feel surprised at all that Alex had accepted it. He was just that strong-willed. He knew that something had to be done, and no one else in his family had been willing to make the journey to do it. Alex had not really blatantly said that, but Emily was able to pick up on the subtext of it pretty well during their conversations. As she thought about the mission that was in front of them, and what part, if any, she was really going to be able to play in it, she found her eyes getting heavy. She had not rested as much as she wanted to, but she thought the sleep that she did get was pretty sound. She had been operating under the assumption that her eyes were tired, but her body was not. That only tended to happen when one had repeatedly interrupted sleep. But it was a good way to be interrupted. She and Alex had made love no less than 3 times over the evening, each one taking turns waking the other up for some fooling around. Emily had never known that was a thing that could happen. She had never known that 2 people could spend the night making love off and on without any other hidden agendas, or without anyone being fake about anything. Emily tried not to dwell on the past, but when she looked back on the relationships that she had previously, and compared them to the new relationship she was beginning with Alex, if that was what you wanted to call it, they were totally pathetic, and she wished she had never wasted time on any of them. That was the dumbest mistake she had ever made, but she figured that it was a learning experience, and now she could move on with her life and move through the world having grown from the experience. The plane began to explode from the front. Emily instantly smelled an odd mixture of blood and jet fuel, with added smoke on top, coming towards her in the form of a humongous fireball that was consuming everything in its path and traveling at an incredible speed. It was going to eviscerate them. They were doomed. Her life was over. Alex grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her close to him as he broke the seatbelt and jumped with her out of the way of the fireball, just narrowly missing being burned to a crisp. The humongous hole in the plane was creating a huge vacuum of air that was sucking people out of their seats, sending them flying into the great vast nothingness of the bright blue sky. The flames were all around them now, as they continued to fly out of the hull of the plane and the wreckage of what was almost behind them. Alex reached out and grabbed onto the bottom of a seat, and held on for dear life, as his other hand held onto Emily's hand. She thought she could feel his sweaty grip loosening, but she assured herself that was impossible. Alex was too strong, and he would never let anything happen to her. They had a future in front of them. They had a life that awaited them. They just had to get through all of this, and they could start over. They could live their lives the way they wanted on their own terms, without having to worry about being in constant danger. Emily's grip was definitely slipping now, as her greasy and sweaty palm provided lubricant on Alex's skin, allowing the gravity and the vacuum suction of the trashed plane to pull her downward towards the howling abyss. Emily grabbed and squeezed as tightly as she could, trying to reach for Alex with her other arm, but the suction of her body was too much. She felt like she was being twisted like a pretzel, and she was being torn away from Alex, and torn away from the life that loomed in front of her. Emily realized at that moment that she was not afraid, she was beyond that. She was well into the state of mind that panic tries to set free, but hope keeps locked away. Everything around her was happening in slow motion, and she was thinking about the fact that a part of her mind had already accepted that she was going to die. She knew that she should be panic-stricken and doing everything she could to fight to survive, but she just could not move her body enough to do it. The strength inside of her had left, and she was just ready to give up. She was tired of fighting the world, and she was tired of fighting herself. She wished she could have just one more chance to reconstruct her life and do it all over. She would have unburdened herself and let go of all the pain and sorrow that she had dealt with in her life. She would have stopped worrying about other people and what they thought she should do or be. She would have allowed herself to love, so that the same love would have found her sooner. But she might not have met Alex. And that would have made everything else meaningless. That was the biggest thing she regretted, not being able to start her life with him. She had been given a taste of it all, and now it was being taken from her. "Hang on," Alex yelled. He was beginning to growl and transform. She could see the panic in his eyes as his hands began to twist into claws, thicken and grow fur. The fingers began to get shorter and broader, as the nails sharpened and lengthened. Emily's own grip was fading rapidly beneath the changes to the surface area of the skin she had been holding onto. She could tell that Alex was trying as hard as he could to stop the change and keep himself human, but it was failing. He was transforming into the beast. It was almost like the beast inside of him knew that this was not supposed to work. It was pushing her away when Alex needed her most. Emily whispered goodbye, a split second before her hand slipped from Alex's grasp, and she began to plunge downward towards the ball of flame that was burning the air beneath her. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath as the heat began to burn her skin. "Wake up." Emily took a huge gasp and sat upright in her chair. Her arms were flailing in front of her, striking the headrest and knocking her tray down in front of her. Alex grabbed her arms and held them at her sides, forcing her to look into his sweet face. Alex. He was alive. He was so beautiful, and he was really there. Emily glanced around at the rest of the plane nervously, but saw nothing except passengers trying to stave off boredom with earphones, books, and magazines. It had all been a dream. Everything was fine. She was perfectly okay. Nothing was happening. Jesus. Emily said to herself, as she relaxed back against the seat. "Bad dream?" Alex said with a smile. "It was terrible," Emily replied. She grabbed her bottle of water, which she did not remember ordering or receiving, and chugged half of it. She was covered in sweat, and her throat felt drier than she could ever remember it being. The water felt sweet and soothing against her hot, dry throat. She let the cool wetness slide down her gullet slowly, as if she were trying to absorb it through her flesh instead of taking it down to her stomach. "Do you want to talk about it?" Alex asked. Emily shook her head. "No. It doesn't matter what it was about. It was just a dream." Alex
censored
an eyebrow at her as if he did not believe her, but she ignored it. She just wanted to relax and try to recover from the nightmare. It had seemed so real. She could smell everything. She could see everything and feel it. It was probably because she was sitting in the actual location where the nightmare took place. Her subconscious was pulling in all of the sights and smells around her. She had never experienced a dream that vivid before. It was intense and perhaps the most frightening thing that she had ever seen. "Well, it had to have been some dream to get you so worked up," Alex said. "I'm okay, really." Alex gave her a sexy smirk as he rubbed her hand softly in his. His eyes glanced over her entire body, slowly as if he was really taking all of her in. Then he drifted his gaze back to lock eyes with hers. She wanted to cave under the onslaught of that sexy yet menacing eye contact, but she held her ground, feeling her heart pounding faster with every second and the moistness between her legs getting more intense. She felt like she needed a shower after all the sweating she had been doing. When she sweat like that, she did not feel sexy, and she especially did not want someone between her legs, but she was feeling the
censored
that she had been wrestling with since she woke up, stirring once again deep inside of her. Alex licked his lips and raised both eyebrows at her, as if telling her exactly what he was thinking. Emily found herself smiling back in response. She was so happy that their minds were always on the same wavelength. Alex slipped out of his seatbelt and casually made his way to the back of that section to the bathroom, closing the door behind him. Emily waited and took several deep breaths. She knew that Alex wanted her to follow him, but the idea of doing it on a plane made her nervous. She had always joked about the idea of joining the Mile High Club, but she wasn't sure it was really feasible or that anyone really did it. She had wondered if it was just something that people joked about. She waited about a minute until she was sure that no one would have seen Alex coming and going from the bathroom. Then she stepped out of the seat and casually made her way back there, stopping just for a split second to do a head check to make sure that no one was watching her. Then she stepped into the bathroom. The room was cramped and much smaller than even the tiniest closets. The logistics did not seem like they would even work for them to do anything in such an enclosed space, but there Alex was standing with his pants around his ankles and his huge thing in his hand. He was holding it with his right hand and smacking it against his left hand like it was a bat, and she was about to get whacked with it. Emily felt her panties sopping wet against her crotch. She was so ready that she could not take the suspense anymore. Maybe this had been Alex's plan all along. He had wanted them to wait so they could experience international flight the right way.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Her head was still swimming with the amazing they just had in the bathroom. She never knew it could be that intense, and that the violence of it could be more fun than the
censored
itself. She loved the way that he had just taken her, and really just had his way with her. That sort of thing had always terrified her, and somewhere deep inside, she had always felt guilty about even entertaining the notion that it could be fun, even when she pleasured herself. She pleasured herself quite regularly the past year or so, and she had discovered that her fantasies varied. But one that always came back to her was being taken roughly and letting go of all control. This had just happened for real. And she loved it. As they settled back in their seats, and Alex took her hand in his, Emily had to smile to herself. She wished she could have seen the expression on her face as she finished. They were going to have to film the next one, she decided. That was definitely happening. She marveled at the idea, and the fact that it was just conceived in her own mind. What in the hell was happening to her? Chapter 9. When they arrived in Moscow, Emily was happy to see how easily they made it through the airport without being made or noticed at all. She had expected to see mob enforcers around every corner. She wanted to probe Alex's brain and find out more about what the Russian mob guys really wanted from them. But she decided again that he would tell her everything after the threat of danger was over. She trusted him more with her life than she would have trusted anyone else at the moment, and so far he had kept her safe and sound. But she was amazed at how they were able to walk around the airport like that and not be made. Perhaps the Russian mob had the same vested interest in keeping all of this on the down low that the American government did. They did not want people to see an alien doing alien things in a public space with a bunch of armed assassins trying to kill it. But then, did that mean that they were going to be waiting for them the second they were in a secluded area? Did that mean that they were going to have to travel in a very stealthy manner? Or were they going to be able to just take a car, like normal? The questions were really starting to pile up inside of Emily's brain, and they were starting to make her very nervous. Alex glanced at her warmly, as if he could sense that she was feeling apprehensive about everything. He squeezed her hand gently and whispered in her ear, "It's all right," as they exited the airport. The car was waiting for them. There was a pale man with blonde hair and a steely gaze standing beside an old SUV. The man did not appear overly friendly, but he might have been trying to keep it all low-key and not attract attention. Emily followed suit as she got into the car. The man and Alex did not speak a word the entire trip, as they passed out of the hustle and bustle of Moscow and farther into the outskirts of town, until the city was a small grouping of buildings that looked like little dots behind them. Emily almost wished they'd had time to do some sightseeing and walking around. From what she could see, Moscow was a very old city, but still very beautiful. It was not at all what she had expected, but then again she was not sure what she had been expecting. Having never been out of the USA, she really had to rely simply on what she might have gleaned from the occasional movie. Rocky IV came to mind suddenly as the movie that had shown her what Russia might actually be like, but she was sure most of that was Hollywood propaganda and staged filmmaking. She was definitely going to put Russia on her list of places to see more of one day, when she was not being chased by mobsters and secret government agencies who wanted to kill her and the man she loved. The man she loved. She was becoming more and more familiar and at ease saying the word love when she thought about Alex. It was unfamiliar, but she discovered that she was really starting to enjoy the idea. Of course, she would never go so far as to say it to him. Not yet. That would be ruining a perfectly good thing before it even really got started. But why would that ruin it? Would he feel obligated to say it back to her? What if he didn't feel that way? What if he said it, but took it back later because he didn't really mean it? What if she didn't really mean it? It was true that she had never felt this close to a man, but did that mean that she was truly in love? Did that mean that she wanted to spend her life with him? Or did it mean that she was having intense feelings, brought on by an intense situation that she had been thrown into? After it was all over, would she feel differently towards Alex? She didn't think so. When she asked herself these questions, she did not feel that the answer to that one was yes. She wanted Alex with every fiber of her being, and if real, true love was more intense than that, then she would have rather been dead. There was no way her heart could have taken something that was stronger. They drove on in silence for almost an hour, and Emily kept looking behind them to make sure they were not being followed. If Alex noticed this, he said nothing and just let her have a field day with her paranoia. The sky was bright, and the snow was not yet as thick as it would soon get. It was a nice time of year to drive in Russia. She looked over at Alex periodically, but he stared straight ahead or looked out the window, all the while holding her close to him with his arm wrapped around her. His warmth was comforting, and she had to fight to stay awake. Now that they were on the ground in a strange country with people after them, she wanted to stay as alert as she could. The traffic was rather sparse, but every time they passed by, Emily felt her stomach tighten into knots, and the image of a group of men hanging out a car and firing at them flashed into her mind. It was maddening, and she was starting to get really scared. What if the Russian mob had found the hiding place for the Sepulchre before they did, and they were just waiting for them to spring a trap? Why was Alex so confident and sure about everything? She admired that quality in him, and she found his self-assurance to be incredibly sexy, but she also had to admit to herself that it scared her quite a bit. If he was overconfident about their safety, then it was possible that he could be leading them right into a trap. She wished that she felt comfortable enough to discuss it with him, but there was something in his way and demeanor that told her to keep her mouth shut about it. She wasn't afraid of what he might say or of offending him, but she felt somehow that she should not be worrying about this right now. She just needed to trust Alex. They turned down a few more roads, and it became apparent that they were getting into a more mountainous region, and that they were heading higher in elevation, where the snow was already a lot thicker, and the air even felt colder inside the heated car. Emily was glad that she had bought a warm set of clothes before they boarded the plane in America. Alex had once again thought of everything. She was surprised that it was this cold, when it was still technically summer in the northern hemisphere. After about another hour of driving with barely a word spoken by anyone in the car, Emily was ready to pull her hair out. She could not believe that men could go that long without saying a word when they were in the same car. It had actually become a bit of a fun game for her to wait and see how long it took. But by the time the car actually stopped, she was ready to scream. It had been a long and exhausting trip so far, and she just wanted everything to be over as soon as possible. She wanted to get this done and go home safe and sound. The anticipation was starting to get to her, combined with all of the stress and strain that she was being put under the past few days. Emily liked to think that she had shit together most of the time, especially when Alex was a bundle of calm and steady nerves that never got rattled. She found the impulse to yell at him and demand he get agitated about something to be overwhelming at times. But she knew that if it went on long enough, then she would be forced to say something to him. "Okay, there is a bit of rocky terrain, and as much as I hate to ask you to do this, I need you to stay here," Alex said, as he opened the back of the SUV and picked up the supplies the other man had brought with him. The man still said nothing, as he grabbed a few tools, and merely nodded as he began to walk out into a frozen patch of flat land. Emily imagined that he suddenly slipped through the ice and began to travel backwards like she had seen on television, and Alex would have to use an axe to get him out. "Okay. How far is it? How long do you think it will take?" Emily asked. She was sure that the nervousness in her voice was starting to show, but she was tired of hiding it. She was scared, damn it. And she didn't care anymore if anyone else knew it. "It's okay. You will be able to see us. It's only about 100 yards across from here. It should only take a few minutes once we reach the right spot to dig the sepulchre out, with both of us doing it." "Is it not buried very deep?" Emily asked. "Oh, it is, but I have digging skills," Alex said with a smile. Emily just shook her head as she watched him walk away. She continued to watch and was wondering why she couldn't have stayed in the car with the heater running, but she was pretty sure that decision had been made by Comrade Silence, who had driven them way out here. She hoped it didn't take very long. She was used to the heat of the desert in Southern California, and while the cold and ice was fun to watch from the car, she'd already taken her fill of standing outside in it. It had only taken the men about 20 minutes to reach the spot when she saw them starting to dig. The other man was working at his fastest pace, but he was not able to remotely keep up with Alex. He wasn't totally turning on the burn, because he did not want to raise suspicion in the other man, but he was working at twice the capacity. It was really funny to watch, and Emily had to stifle her laughter. She was not sure how well sound carried out here with mountains on both sides of them, and she didn't want Comrade's silence to turn into Comrade drives away and leave them stranded. The sky above her was like something out of a movie or a painting she had seen somewhere. It was the perfect combination of sunny blue, with a thin layer of gray clouds hovering over a tinge of violet, hazy reflections, and a tinge of pink on another lower layer of clouds. She wished that she could have captured that in a picture or a screensaver, but the camera on her phone never took good enough pictures, especially when it came to sunsets. God, the sun was already setting. It was insane how traveling to the other side of the world messed with your internal clock. The flight from San Diego had taken 15 hours to Moscow, plus the fact that Moscow was 10 hours ahead of San Diego, and then the 3-hour drive into the middle of nowhere, and now she was staring at a sunset almost a day and a half away from where she started from. This very realization made her feel as if she had lost a lot of time in the air. But then again, she had slept a good majority of the flight, which made the time roll by much faster. It was all helped by the fact that she was able to lean on the amazing Alex. The men stopped digging suddenly, and it appeared that they were actually filling the hole back in tightly. Emily was wondering how they had managed to break through the frozen ground, but she had a feeling that Alex had helped with that a bit. She was still amazed by all of the wonderful things that he could do that ordinary people could not. She was not sure if that was the teenage girl in her, who wanted to marry the bionic man, or if she was just impressed as anyone would be. It was getting harder to tell. By the time the men made it back, it was starting to get a little bit dark, and Emily was glad that she was no longer standing out there alone freezing her britches off. Even through the heavy snow boots that she had bought, she was beginning to feel the cold nipping at her toes. She wanted to get into a warm car as fast as possible. She was never happier to see anyone than when Alex came walking up beside her. He smiled, and she could see the relaxed demeanor that came over him. It had been like a line of tension around him before then, and now it was gone. She could feel the weight being released off his shoulders as he wrapped her in a warm embrace and
censored
her softly on the lips. "It's going to be okay," Alex said as he held her close. Just hearing those words from his sweet lips, with his warm and deep voice, was enough to make everything in the world align together in total peace and harmony in her eyes. It was like there was nothing that would ever be wrong ever again. It was a beautiful feeling, but she knew that it was a fantasy and that it would not last. They were not out of the woods yet, they still had psychos on their trail. Emily wanted to see the sepulchre, but knew that asking Alex to show it to the other man in the open might have been a bad idea. She was still unaware of who exactly this man was and how much he knew. She damn sure wasn't going to shoot her mouth off with something stupid and blow the whole thing for Alex. For all she knew, the guy was a mole who was scamming Alex to lead him to the sepulchre. Or it could have been that she had seen far too many spy movies and was letting her imagination run wild with her again. Damn her clever brain sometimes. The drive back towards Moscow was pretty much the same as the drive out into the wilderness had been, quiet and boring. But Emily could not allow herself to complain too much. Just knowing that they had the sepulchre, and that she was relaxing in Alex's warm embrace, was enough to make the trip worthwhile. Alex had told her they would stay in a hotel that night, and then head out on the plane first thing in the morning with their return flight. She hated the idea of staying that close to the Russian mob who were after Alex, but she figured that he knew what he was doing. There was a loud popping noise as the other man's body began to twitch violently behind the wheel of the car, and the windshield started to pop with holes, bouncing glass back towards the seats. The car veered suddenly and hit the embankment before flipping onto its back. As the car spun through the air, Emily felt Alex wrap her beneath him into as much of a ball as he could to allow his body to absorb all of the impact as the car flipped and tossed about on the desolate road. The roar of the engine seemed to grow louder as the car squealed almost in a death call. Emily felt her insides being jolted to and fro, and she kept bracing herself for the impact that never came. But just hearing the shocks that Alex's body was absorbing made her feel sick to her stomach. He was holding her tightly in place beneath him, and she tried to stay as still as possible, while the car continued to roll over and over again, grinding to a stop in the middle of the road. Emily was not sure that they were stopped yet. She expected the rolling and the flipping in the car to continue. The motion sickness was taking hold, and she felt the nausea rising up deep inside of her body. She wanted to vomit and then pass out. That would have been the perfect way to end that day. As she tried to move, her stomach felt like it was flipping over and over inside of her. She held her head down towards the roof of the car, which was now beneath her, while she waited for the sickness to pass. Alex reached over and held her close. "Don't move," he whispered. The shock of what had just happened was still hitting Emily. She was not quite sure why Alex had said that to her. It took her several seconds to realize that the Russian driver, whose name she would never know, had been shot before the car flipped over. Someone else was there. Someone was going to kill them. The footsteps were getting closer outside. She could hear them echoing in the darkness. Tap, tap, tap. Was that the sound of doom coming closer and closer? She wanted to get out and run, but she knew that was the very thing that would get her killed. Still, she might have gone ahead and done it if Alex had not been holding her so tightly. His strong arms were still wrapped tightly around her torso. She looked at him, and he must have seen the fear in her eyes because he held a finger to his lips, urging her to not make even a whisper. It was possible that their attackers thought they were dead in the crash. Maybe they were banking on that. Maybe they had guns and were just about to riddle the car to smithereens with bullets. Was there more than one person? She had not seen anyone. She had not seen anything at all. It had happened so fast. Even with the car flipping over 1,000 times, the whole thing probably had not taken 5 seconds to be over and done. She could not help looking at the poor man who was just inches from them. Even in the dark, she thought she could see the damage done to his poor body. Tears threatened to dampen her cheeks, but she held them back. Any noise at all right then might have gotten them killed. She had to wait for Alex to make his move. She saw a light. It was a small light moving around to and fro like a mutant firefly. The man had a flashlight. He was going to lean in and see if they were all dead. Emily held her breath and closed her eyes, willing herself not to flinch a muscle. With the cold coming in, she could actually feel the heat of the flashlight as it shone on her skin. Would he see? Would he see that neither Alex nor she had any blood or any real damage done to their bodies? Would he see that they were both perfectly all right, and they were just faking? Would they be sitting ducks, just waiting to be picked off here? What was Alex's plan? What was he thinking? Surely he was not going to let. The roar came from behind her, and the sound was deafening. Even before she could place a hand up on her ears to instinctively block out the sound that pounded in her head, she could feel the hot breath and the warm fur on her back. Alex had transformed. She no sooner heard the thought echoing in her head than she felt the whole car shake as Alex leapt out of the shattered window. Then she heard the gunshots and the screaming. Emily wanted to crawl out of the car, but something told her to stay where she was. She was safer in there, surrounded by a body of steel, than she would have been outside in the wide open night air. Still, a part of her wanted to see what was happening. She wanted to see Alex winning. And she wanted to see if her beloved was being hurt. So far, all she heard were moans and groans as Alex fought with the gunman. She heard at least 3 separate voices. They were screaming and then going silent one by one. The gunshots popped less and less and died down with the sound of the voices. Was Alex killing them? She knew they were very bad people who deserved to die, but she could not ever see Alex killing someone unless it was absolutely necessary. If they died, then it was because they left Alex no choice but to save himself and her at any cost. The last voice stopped suddenly, and all she could hear were a few victorious-sounding roars from the lion. Emily waited for several seconds, still unsure about whether or not she should come out from her hiding place. The fear was exploding her heart in her,
censored,
as it pumped harder and harder. She tried to get a handle on her shaking hands, but she had been too scared too many times recently, and she was not sure how much more of this absolute terror she was going to be able to take. Emily? Come out, it's okay. Alex's voice was suddenly coming through the shattered window, and a second later his sweet face popped into it, followed by his hand reaching out to her. She felt the relief wash over her swiftly, and her entire body felt like it was about to quit on her. Somehow she found the strength to reach out and take his hand. He slowly pulled her out of the car, and she was finally able to survey the scene. There were 3 men dressed in fancy suits with guns lying close by their motionless bodies. Emily looked at them carefully in the dark, trying to determine their fates. Are they? Emily stammered. No. They will be okay later. I am against killing. I thought you knew that, Alex said with a smile. I thought so, but if there is no choice. I don't believe that. There is always a choice when it comes to killing. Come on, we have to move. She followed Alex to the SUV that the assassins were driving and hopped in the passenger seat. A second later, they were driving down the icy road. Emily felt that she had held her
censored
long enough with the questions she had been dying to ask. This had been the second attempt on their lives in the past day, and all of it was starting to wear her pretty damn thin. How did they find us? Do you think it had anything to do with your nameless friend back there? Emily asked. It's possible, but I highly doubt it, Alex replied. Why? Who was he? I don't know his name. That was part of the plan. He was being held captive by the Russian mob when I first encountered him. The first time I tried to retrieve the replica, before I had ascertained its exact location. The mob tried to kill me, and in the fighting the trunk of their car opened up and his body came bouncing out. He was unconscious, so I took him after the fight was over to a secure location. When he came to, he offered to do something for me in exchange for saving his life. So you trusted him for no reason? Any idea why the mob was abducting him? No clue. He said he didn't really know. But now I'm starting to think he was a plant. What do you mean? I think they traced him to us. The only way they could have done that was to plant a homing device on him. This led them to the replica, and to us. The Russians have known about the replica since my grandfather planted it here. They found his cylinder transporter, and they caught up with him. They were going to keep him captive to do experiments on him, but he escaped, with the replica. They were just starting to learn some of its power and its properties. But they had no idea where he hid it, and he was dead before they could torture it out of him. So they know where we are. We have to get out of the country, Emily said. It is highly unlikely that they can track us now, although we do need to ditch this car at some point. I'm sure it has a tracer on it too. Can't we just pull over and look for it? We could do that, and we could destroy it, but that is going to give them the message that something has happened to their men, and that they have failed in their mission. We can't have them knowing that, so when we get closer to civilization we will ditch the car. Okay, sounds like you have thought of everything, Emily said. She had not meant the remark to sound sarcastic, but she felt it might have come through a little bit that way. Oh, I don't want to fool you that badly. I haven't thought of everything. I have just learned to anticipate a few things here and there. I'm starting to think that I've become too good at this sort of thing. Alex smiled at her. She caught the devilish look in his eye, and she could not help herself from laughing. The man had smooth skills, and his charm was like something she just could not resist. Everything that he did was sexy, and she was completely in love with it all. They had been driving for about an hour when Alex suddenly pulled over. The night outside beckoned at Emily for them to stay inside. The darkness was overwhelming and menacing as Alex shut off the engine of the car. In the pit of her stomach, Emily had to wonder what might happen if they were never able to start the car again. They would be stranded in the middle of nowhere. She had no idea how far they were from the nearest town, and she had not seen another car for at least 20 miles. It was like they were driving alone on Pluto or something. Somehow they had been stranded in an icy world hidden from view from the Earth they knew. She wondered if she might have seen that in a Twilight Zone episode or something. It certainly felt like they were alone. What are we doing? Emily asked. I have the replica. I need to try it out. You are going to do that here? Well, I can't do it in front of people, and this is my main reason for coming to Earth initially. So I'm going to do it here. It seems like the best place. I just hope no one comes along right now. I don't think you have to worry about that, Emily said quietly. She moaned silently, but followed him out of the car and out into the frozen tundra beside them. Alex handed her his iPhone with the flashlight turned on. She held the light for him, shining it at his hands as he sat his bag down on the ground and pulled the replica from it. This was the first time she had seen the coveted object, and she was impressed. It was about the size of a small trophy, only it was gold and shaped like a dagger with strange designs and buttons on it. She had never seen anything that even closely resembled it. Even in the small light she was using from the phone, it shone so brightly, she almost had to close her eyes to hide from the sheen. Alex held it a few inches above the ground, as small legs shot out of the base of it. He sat it down and proceeded to press a few buttons in a very specific sequence. Then he looked up at her and paused for a second before pressing the final button. Alex stood up and waited. Emily wanted to reach out and take his hand right then. She wanted to feel some comfort and warmth. This thing had caused them so many problems so far, and she blamed it for the fact that she had almost been killed several times in the past 24 hours. It was impossible to not feel hatred and disgust for the dreaded thing, but at the same time she was in awe of its majesty and the legend that surrounded it. She couldn't help but feel that she was in some way standing at the dawn of history here. After several seconds, nothing happened. She glanced at Alex, watched his response. So far he remained emotionless and still. Emily wanted to ask him the question that was building inside of both their minds, but she decided to wait and see what he did. Was the replica supposed to be doing something that could be seen? Was it supposed to be doing something global? She really didn't know, and like all things in life, the not knowing was the part that killed you. They waited a few more minutes. Nothing. The silence in the dark was petrifying to Emily, and she kept fighting the silence that tried to amplify itself in the cold recesses of her ears. She tried to keep it out, but it wormed its way in anyway. And she swore she could hear monsters or creatures growling and stalking their prey in the cold darkness. She knew that there were untold scores of creatures, even in an icy wasteland like this one, that stalked their prey under the cover of darkness, where not even their shadows would be visible. Alex bent down just then and retried it. He punched in the same keystrokes on the pad, and then pressed the bright red button at the bottom. And waited. They waited again for at least 2 minutes with no change. Shit. It's not working, Alex finally said. Emily wondered how long it was going to take him to admit defeat, and that they might have needed to try a different approach. What? That doesn't make any sense, Emily said. It was hard to believe after everything they had been through, and the trouble caused trying to get to this thing, that now that it was in their possession it was more useless than a paperweight. I know. There has to be something that I'm missing. There has to be something that I'm just not getting. Well, we don't want to wait here too long. If they are tracing us, then they are going to wonder why we stopped randomly for several minutes when we are miles from nowhere. You don't think that might tip them off? I guess you're right. We should move. They hopped back in the warm truck and headed back down the road. The drive was quiet for a while, with neither of them saying anything. Alex's mood seemed to change a bit. Emily could tell he was racking his brain through all of the plausible scenarios as to why the machine was not working. Emily herself had been through everything that she could think of already, but she didn't offer any solutions. After all, she did not know much about this machine, and Alex did. Maybe it is just too cold? It might need to be warmed up a bit first? Alex wondered out loud, but then shook his head at the absurdity. No, that isn't right. The machine has that much power. I don't think something as silly as temperature can affect it. I wouldn't think so, Emily offered her agreement. It is going to bother me until I figure it out, Alex laughed. I know. But you just have to keep your head on straight until you do, Emily said. I like to think I'm pretty level-headed about things, Alex replied. Emily smiled back at his confidence, but she had to agree that the man really was pretty level-headed about everything. She had yet to see him get truly flustered or upset. She had seen him angry a few times, but she imagined that was just so that he could fight better. Rage was often a more suitable emotion for fighting than calmness was. She understood that, but it was very strange the way that Alex was able to turn that rage completely off and just be himself instantly again afterwards. It was like he could will himself to feel whatever he wanted to, whenever he wanted. That might have been the reason he was even keel all of the time. He was able to will it out of him at all times. Emily was not sure how healthy that sort of behavior was, though, and she wished he was a bit more honest with his feelings. In that way, Alex was a very typical guy. He never talked about his emotions and pretended not to even have any, but in his case, she was fairly certain now that he was able to just turn them off. She wanted to see how she could get him to stop doing that, but she imagined it might have been crucial to the mission. She respected and admired it in a lot of ways. She had always felt like she showed too much emotion in the world sometimes, and that was a vulnerability that people liked to exploit. About 10 miles outside of Moscow, they saw the perfect opportunity to get rid of the car when they pulled into a diner by the side of the road. They got out of the SUV, and Alex quickly found an older truck that was not locked. He hot-wired it in less than a minute, and within 2 minutes they were on their way down the road into town. The city was beautiful at night. The way the lights shone brightly in the sky was epic in its majesty. Emily had always loved to see a city at night from a distance. To witness that spectacle from afar, when you were getting steadily closer and closer to it, was a magical feeling that felt like you were moving towards a sweet reward for your travels. It was like something you had been dreaming of for so long, and finally it was in front of you, and it was far more than what you expected. She felt like she was not finishing a journey, but starting a new one within the confines of that sweet city space. Emily kept expecting to see the police or the mob right on their trail at every turn as they made their way through the busy streets of Moscow. For such an old city, with such a long history, it felt weird to see so much modernism everywhere. Like most Americans, Emily kept imagining a place like Moscow to be very much behind the times, but she was pleasantly surprised to see it was like a lot of cities in America. They eventually found their way to the hotel, in the center of town. Surprisingly, it was an upscale hotel, the likes she had never really stayed in before. She looked at Alex at first like he might be joking. How in the world were they going to keep a low profile in a place like this? For all she knew, they were actually walking into a mob-run hotel. The place appeared as if it might have a casino inside of it. What? Alex asked as he watched Emily's incredulous gaze. You are joking, right? We can't stay here, we will get made for sure. You would think that, but it is actually going to be a great cover for us. Just let me do the talking and everything will be fine, Alex said, flashing that winning smile at her again. I definitely have a bad feeling about this place, Emily said. They went inside and checked in. Much to Emily's surprise, Alex began to speak perfect Russian as he conversed with the hotel desk clerk. She had no idea what he was saying, or how he had picked up Russian in the few days they had spent there, and it was almost impossible for her to keep a straight face and pretend to be Russian too. She did not say anything, and luckily the desk clerk did not ask her anything at all. Emily just did her best to stand to the side and relax with a smile on her face. When they got to their room, Emily was shocked at how lavish it was. It was like stepping into the world of the super rich, and she expected to see the crew of MTV Cribs come rushing into the room at any minute. The bed was huge and covered with fancy gold-colored blankets that were perfectly tucked in with hospital corners. The television was 50 inches wide and hung on the wall like a beautiful painting. The bathroom was huge, with a beautiful walk-in shower with heads at either side of the shower, as well as a huge 6-person jacuzzi in the corner of the bathroom. "How the hell did we end up here?" Emily asked as she plopped down on the bed. "Oh, I told you I have a few surprises up my sleeve," Alex said as he joined her. He leaned in and
censored
her gently as he wrapped his arm around her. "I'll say. But seriously, where did you get the money for this?" "I overrode a bank's computer," Alex said. "What?" "Well, your computer system technology here is pretty basic compared to what we have on my planet. It was easy to set up an account and hijack the bank to pour money into my account." "What? You mean you are stealing?" "No. The funds are hypothetical and don't really exist until I tell the bank to generate them. And it is not a legit bank either. It is a bank that is run by the Russian mob who wants me dead." Emily shook her head and laughed as she lay down on the comfortable bed. The man was too much. He was the kind of guy that every mother warns their daughter about, but he really had a heart of gold at the end of the day. Emily did not feel the least bit bad about taking money from criminals who had already tried to kill her twice. "So I'm cold as can be," Alex said. "My planet doesn't have these extreme temperatures like you guys do here, so I'm not used to it at all. I hear that jacuzzi calling my name if you want to join me." Within a minute, Alex was standing there in front of her, bare-assed,
censored
and walking into the bathroom. Emily joined him 3 minutes later. The tub was almost completely full as she climbed in, easing her body gently into the warm, steamy water. The contrast of temperatures between the cold that she had felt before and the heat of the water was exhilarating. At first it was almost too much to take as her foot slowly moved into the water. But after her body began to acclimatize, she allowed the rest of herself to dip into the water. Once her body was submerged, she was able to lean back and just relax. The heat invaded her pores, warming her body up almost instantly. Her muscles began to loosen, and she could almost sense the blood rushing to her skin and the glow that radiated off her body at that moment. And Alex's hungry eyes. He was staring right into her eyes intently. His beautiful gaze was distracting and engaging. She felt her body wanting to go to him, but she remained on her side of the jacuzzi. She wanted to allow her body the proper time to warm up first. She needed the relaxation of the water moving up against her skin in small microwaves of pleasure. The warm water was brushing over her now as she continued to settle into it, getting more and more relaxed. It was moving between her legs as well, and her body responded to it as her legs opened wider. Alex could see through the top of the water, at the hint of her special places that lay below. He was turned on by it. She could see it not only in his eyes, but in the way he was pursing his lips and dragging his
censored
sensuously across them to leave a small trail of sparkling moisture that made him look so damn
censored.
Right then, she could see movement beneath the water in front of him. His arm was moving up and down as his fist was submerged beneath. He suddenly propped himself up on the side of the jacuzzi so that she could get a better look. His huge member was long and thick in his hand as he continued to stroke himself up and down. Slowly but evenly in long, steady movements. When he reached the top, he opened his hand slightly to allow his huge head to gain access to the tightness of his fist. She could see that he pulsated the head, squeezed it hard before stroking back downwards to the base and then repeating. Emily wished that she had been stroking him right then. She wished that he was half in her mouth and half in her hand. She needed to feel him inside of her somewhere, but that would ruin this beautiful game they were playing. So she relaxed and played along as she propped herself up on the side of the jacuzzi, leaning back to rest her neck and head on the wall behind her.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
But after that, Alex might want to go on with his life. He would probably want to go back to his kingdom, and she would never get in the way of that, but she was prepared to go with him. She was prepared to give up the entire world to be with this amazing man. She had never seen someone with as much heart, soul, determination, and love that he held inside of him. But he was also so rugged and strong that she knew that she would never have to worry about relying on him. He would always be right there for her, and she would always be right there for him. There was no doubt about it, she loved this man. Chapter 10. The crashing sound woke her from her dream. She was not aware that she had even been dreaming, which was unusual for her because she always used to remember them all, even while she was in them. She had read up on the phenomena before. It was called lucid dreaming, and she had even tried to experiment with it in her youth, but had not had to do that for quite some time. In fact, she had hardly dreamed at all until she met Alex. The sound was loud, and it sounded like it was a bomb exploding right beside her head, spraying glass everywhere. Her skin was being pricked by thousands of sharp little slithers of glass, as the window exploded into little bits and sprayed all over the bed. Her first thought was that there really was a bomb in their room, and that they were both going to be dead in seconds. She had always wondered how fast you would die if you were unfortunate enough to have a bomb go off right beside you, or if you actually landed on the bomb. The dreams of her childhood were often violent, and at one point she had been too afraid to even go to sleep. But this was not a bomb. A second before, Alex grabbed her arm and flung her over the other side of the bed, and onto the floor she saw two shadowy figures flying through the mist of glass that was being thrown everywhere. As Alex whiplashed her over his body and onto the hard floor, she tried to get a grip on what was happening and the pain that was about to follow. The floor came up to meet her quickly and took the air from her body. She had tried to stiffen herself instinctively, and she immediately regretted that decision as she hit the ground hard and bounced upwards a bit before resting on the floor. She felt the wind leave her body as the pain roared inside of her. Her eyes closed shut tightly while she tried to take another breath, but she felt it might have been mostly due to the horror that had befallen them once again. She had not been able to get a good look at the men who were attacking them, but she suspected the mob had found her as she feared they might. It was becoming clear to her that as much as she trusted Alex, his decision-making skills were starting to get on her nerves, as he had placed them in danger several times now. If they made it through this one, she made a point to let him know what she really thought about it all. She could hear the roar coming from Alex as he leapt off the bed and threw his body at the attackers. There were loud grunts from the other side of the bed, and a second later, Emily saw one of the men flying past the bed and slamming hard against the wall. She wanted to stay hidden and for a brief moment thought about climbing under the bed, but the idea of being totally trapped like that made her rethink that choice. That was when she heard the lion roars coming from Alex, and she knew that the violence was about to escalate to another level. She wanted to see, but at the same time, she was afraid to. She hated to admit this to herself because it made her seem like some little girl or a groupie, but she loved to see Alex turn into a lion, and she loved to see him fight. It was the most exciting and thrilling thing that she had ever seen, and she doubted that she would ever get tired of it. But she was terrified that he would be killed. As tough as he was and as awesome as his powers were, he might still be killed during one of these fights, and she would be instantly killed next. So unfortunately, she was not able to enjoy the fights as much as she had hoped to. A body fell over the bed, bouncing into the air and landing right beside Emily. She was now face to face with a man that she did not recognize. She could see the anger in his eyes as he recognized that she was there, and started to quickly recover from the blow he had just received. But in an instant Alex was there at the edge of the bed above her, in full lion form, letting loose his angry roar. The sound of the roar that close to her head made her feel like her ears were about to start bleeding. The pounding in her head felt like it might not quit, as a bout of nausea began to rise up from her stomach. She wanted to move as far away from that spot right then as she possibly could, but she was trapped by the bed and the other man. The man was not the least bit intimidated by the lion in his face. It was almost like he expected it, and was not at all surprised. The smug look on his face quickly turned to total rage as he began to get up to prepare for another attack. Emily did not see a gun on this man. How was he expecting to attack Alex, she wondered. Alex quickly took a swipe at the man with his claw, and sent his body flying across the floor, where he landed on top of the other man who was just starting to get up. Both men were injured, but their tenacity was to be admired as they started to climb to their feet again. Emily was once again thinking about hiding under the bed, but those thoughts were removed from her mind as she saw the two men in front of her shift into lions almost within the blink of an eye. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. In all of her life she had never seen anyone transform like that but Alex. And now she was face to face with 3 lion shifters. There were 3 full male African lions in her hotel room. The fear she was feeling was indescribable. Every muscle in her body was frozen solid, and her body temperature felt like it was dropping rapidly as the coldest wave of shock washed over her body, starting with her toes and moving rapidly up to her fingertips. Alex was now in a danger that he had not been in before. He was now fighting others of his kind. Why were they here? And why were they trying to kill Alex? Wasn't he supposed to be their king? Alex seemed to be running through those same questions in his mind, as he failed to intercept the telegraph signals that one of the lions was making to him, a split second before it lunged into the air. The 2 lions collided on the mattress as Emily crawled under the bed and moved quickly to the other side, where she rolled out and ran into the larger section of the room. Her mind was racing as she tried to think of some way that she could help Alex. He needed help in any way he could get it. Alex couldn't possibly fight 2 of his own kind at the same time, could he? Suddenly, she heard a loud roaring squeal as the lion on top fell to the ground unconscious. Emily wanted to cheer and do a thankful celebration, but her mood quickly changed as the other lion ran at her. He was under the impression that she would be easy prey while his friend dealt with Alex until he could get over to offer assistance. Knowing that Alex was their king, they had to know how powerful he was. Emily's legs froze stiff as she tried to run and instantly fell to the floor. She was suddenly aware for some reason that she was still
censored,
and it felt even more terrifying for a reason she could not put together than if she had been fully dressed. There was something less dignified about dying.
Censored.
She tried to get up, but the lion was right there pouncing towards her, ready to sink its huge teeth into her body. Alex tackled the lion off Emily and instantly began to bite and claw at it. Alex was bigger, stronger, and faster. It was apparent that even among his own people, Alex was a very dominant person. That might explain why he was the king of his people. There had to be something in his genes that just spoke to the fact that he was a born leader. The lion beneath him whined loudly, and then it ceased to move. Emily's breath began to move in and out of her body in huge gasps, but they were starting to get closer to normal and slow down a bit. By the time Alex reached her to offer comfort, he was his normal self again. The lion was gone. He was covered in sweat and a bit of blood, but his touch still felt good against her skin as he held her in a tight embrace. Emily could not stop the tears that fell down her face. This might have been the first time that she had seen Alex in real danger, where she thought he might not make it out alive. It was different when he was fighting other lion shifters. They were just as strong and superhuman as he was. Or at least she thought they were. But Alex came out on top once again. Emily never wanted to believe that any of that was luck, but she knew that if pressed, Alex would tell her that a good bit of his winning was luck. It was like that with everyone after you reached a certain level. Alex had been doing what he did for so long that it was impossible to think that he had not been lucky a time or two. "Hey, it's okay," Alex said as he held her close. Emily could not help noticing how gross it was that they were both
censored,
and Alex was a good bit covered in blood, but she could see that a lot of it was his own. He had been scratched, but the cuts were healing right before her eyes. Although the fresh blood still remained, that was kind of gross, she thought. "We have to go," Alex said as he quickly put his clothes on. Emily followed suit, and they both left in a hurry carrying their few belongings. They just missed the crew that was coming up to investigate the noise as they hopped on the opposite elevator. Emily caught the hotel crew just coming off the hotel elevator a second before their elevator doors closed, and they began to go down. They made it out of the elevator and past the front desk without arousing suspicion. Emily realized that most of this was probably due to the fact that it was 3 in the morning, and there were few people staffed in the hotel, and few guests who were actually roaming around the place. After quickly and easily getting out of the hotel, they walked out to the parking lot, where Alex pressed the electronic alarm button on the key fob he had stolen from the 2 shifters he had just fought, and they found themselves driving a Mercedes. Emily was a bit shocked. With all of the low temperatures and snow around, she always thought a sports car like that might stand out like a sore thumb, but maybe they wanted to be recognized. Maybe the Russian government was corrupt, and they were working for them. No one in their right mind would mess with those 2 guys, because everyone knew what they did and who they were. But were they even working with anyone here? Or were they solo? They were obviously from Zuha, like Alex. As the car sped down the road with the hotel getting farther and farther away in the rear view mirror, Emily began to feel a lot safer. The city was still relatively busy, with the hustle and bustle of whatever some people liked to do at 3 in the morning. That had never made much sense to someone like Emily, who deeply enjoyed her sleep. What the hell was that? Emily asked, after they moved away from the busiest part of town. She had no idea where Alex was taking them, but she decided to go with one question at a time here. They were one of mine, Alex said. They were from Zuha. Both of them had the ability to shift. That was crazy. Why would anyone from your planet try to kill you? And why would they travel all the way here to do it? It's my brother, Alex said. What? Since my father died a few weeks ago, I was given the throne since I am his firstborn son. My younger brother, Josh, is chomping at the bit to be king. He is only 21 years old, and he is rash and bold like all kids his age. He also happens to be far more diabolical than I ever thought he was. I can't believe that he actually sent assassins to kill me so that he can be king. Your little brother did that? You don't know? I'd bet everything I have on it. There is no other plausible explanation. Emily was silent for a moment. She could not believe that someone's own brother would be that evil. It was like something she might have caught on some of those late-night Lifetime made-for-TV movies that she hated to admit she absolutely loved. Do you think he will send more? I don't know. If he sends too many people, it will look suspicious. They track that? Emily asked. They keep pretty good tabs on me, especially since I snuck away. I imagine these guys were sent by the kingdom, but my brother intercepted them, and offered them higher positions if they killed me and left me here on Earth. Then they would just come back and say that I was dead by the time they found me. They'd blame it on your government. How do you know all of this? I've seen similar things happen before. I've heard rumors that couldn't be proven about political leaders being assassinated when traveling, which is why it is forbidden for the king to take trips like this to foreign planets on the far reaches of the galaxy without telling anyone where he is going. Wow, so what happens now? We have to figure out why the Seplica is not working. We have to find somewhere secluded to really try this out. It tends to make a lot of noise, and to cause flashes of bright light as its energy is released out into the atmosphere. That is why I didn't try it out at the hotel, in case you were wondering. No, I figured I somehow distracted you, Emily flirted. Well, you definitely did do that, Alex replied as he placed his hand on her thigh. They were almost on the outer edge of the city when Alex pulled down a dark alley and then pulled up to an abandoned warehouse. He got out and quickly broke open the rusted lock on the outside of the door and slid it up to the top. He retrieved the high-powered flashlights he had bought at an all-night superstore. Emily could not believe that Russia actually had those. The way that America had infested the world was kind of amazing. They found a vacant, wide-open area of the warehouse. Alex reached inside of the bag and removed the Seplica. He stumbled backwards as he held the Seplica out in front of him. It was glowing bright red now as he clutched it in his hand. The red light was shining over his hand, creating odd-looking shadows on the wall, and making it look like demons were about to devour them. Goosebumps riddled across Emily's skin, giving her the sensation that it was trying to crawl away from her bones. "Why is it glowing? Is it doing something?" Emily asked. Alex was silent for a moment, and then he looked at her with a look of confirmation in his eyes. He had figured it out. "It's the blood. It's lion's blood that makes it work. That is why it wouldn't do anything. I've got the lion's blood on my hand." "Wow, I guess that does make sense." "I dunno, but I'll take it. I just hope I'm right and it works." He sat the sepulchre down on the floor, and Emily shone the flashlight over the pad. The blood was bright red, splattered all over his skin, giving them an eerie look that made her queasy. Emily never got this way around animal blood, which she came into contact from time to time, but knowing that it had come from a person, well, a human hybrid anyway, made it all much more violent and distasteful. She had actually passed out at the sight of blood before, but she was hoping that she could keep it together this time. Alex finished inputting the information, and he stood back to wait. The red glow was getting a bit brighter. It was tough to look at, and it created an odd clash with the brightness from the flashlight, so Emily shut it off. Now the eerie red light was the only thing lighting up the darkness of the warehouse. Emily looked around at the darkness as they continued to wait. Even though she was there with Alex, she could not help wondering what was hiding in the shadows beyond the red halo that surrounded them. It was like a very fine line that cut off where the red ended and the total black began. Anything could have been hiding in that light right then. "I think it's working," Alex said. His voice held more hope than certainty though, and Emily felt the gnawing inside of her that this was going to come to another dead end. She really wanted this to be the one thing that brought everything together, mostly because she wanted Alex to not feel like he had failed. He had never shown her that he ever felt harsh or negative emotions with himself, but she could tell that he was just ignoring those feelings that came from so far within. If he did complete the missions, then it was very likely that he was going to go back to his kingdom, and it was even possible that he was not going to invite her to go along with him. As much as she didn't want to see that happen, she wanted his unhappiness even less. His joy and well-being meant more to her than she ever thought someone else's feelings could. So Emily held her breath and willed this damn thing to work. But the red light grew dim, and then there was only darkness. She waited a beat before turning on the flashlight, because she did not want to see the look of sadness flash across Alex's face, not even for an instant. She wanted to give him at least a few minutes to try to hide it, and to wipe the pain away before settling on that sweet smile that he was bound to flash at her. Emily turned on the flashlight and held it on the sepulchre. The gold color was magnificent in the light contrast to the dark around it. "I don't get it. What else does it need?" Alex asked out loud. He placed his hands on his hips and squatted down beside it and stroked the magical object gingerly. What was it going to take? "Having problems, big brother?" The voice cut through the silence and pierced Emily's heart with terror. She jumped and found herself running towards Alex's side, dropping the light to the floor. It was at this moment that Emily noticed the dark giving way to the light outside. They had left the door open to the warehouse, and she could now see in the absence of the flashlight that the sun was starting to rise. In a few more minutes, it would definitely be more light than dark. She was relieved by this fact that twisted its way into her mind in a matter of nanoseconds, but she was terrified by the intrusion of a new person to their secluded activities. "And did he say brother?" Alex stood up, guarding Emily behind him. The look on his face was one of concern mixed with rage and frustration. "Josh," Alex said as his eyes adjusted to the light. Josh smiled at him as he walked closer to the center, his features now being illuminated by the light on the floor. The shadows that danced across his face were similar to the demonic ones that Emily had seen on the walls just minutes ago, but they appeared to be less menacing as he moved slowly, shifting his weight from side to side. "Haven't seen you for a bit, big bro. It seems you left everyone in a panic when they discovered that you were gone," Josh said. Emily noticed that Josh looked a lot like Alex, but he was a bit thinner, and he seemed to have a more menacing demeanor. She wondered if it was because of what she knew about what Josh had tried to do to Alex, or if it was just because Josh had that
censored
swagger that was beyond confident and zeroed in on total arrogance. "I had some business to take care of," Alex said. The anger in his voice was seething through his gritted teeth. Emily felt the tension in the room, thicker than a pool of fog wrapping around her. Josh smiled as he stood there, carefully surveying the scene between Emily and Alex. He appeared to be able to read their every emotion and thought in their eyes. His gaze moved from Alex then over to Emily. He locked eyes with her, and she could see him clearly now, as daybreak was well underway, and the darkness in the warehouse had faded, except for the darkest recesses in the back corners. Josh was even more slender than Emily had initially thought he was, as she took him in again with her eyes, still gauging and trying to formulate an exact opinion of him. "Well, I can certainly see you did," Josh said, pointing to the replica. He was eyeing it as if he had planted it in hiding himself. He clearly knew far more about it than Emily wished he did. It made sense, being Alex's brother, that he might know a lot about the replica, but given his evil nature, that was not information that Emily was at all happy with him having. She wanted to wipe the smug smile off his face and make him eat the replica. Just thinking about what he had tried to do to Alex was driving her crazy. How could they stand there and pretend to have a civilized conversation with this monster? Alex should have been ripping his head off right then, but instead, he seemed almost interested in what Josh had to say. "You knew I came here for the replica. You knew it all along, didn't you?" Alex asked. Emily was not aware that Alex's advisors did not know anything about the replica or where it was located. She had always just assumed that they knew about it, but did not think it was important enough to risk losing their king over. "Grandpa told me those same stories, knucklehead. It was not hard to find you. So why are you here? You going to try to finish the job that your two lackeys couldn't?" Alex asked. Emily had never heard that level of malice in his voice, and it was a bit disturbing to her, but she understood perfectly well where it was coming from. "Well, sometimes if you want something done right," Josh said, trailing off. "Do you really need to be king that badly?" Alex asked. "Well, yeah. It is something I've always wanted. Hell, I know it means nothing to you because you are just too noble to care about such things. You are such a melodramatic rebel cliché," Josh said. "It's better than being an egotistical narcissist who wants absolute power and will stop at nothing, no matter how devious, to get it. That is a cliché. Right you are. So I guess we do have at least one thing in common. Well, two things if you count our taste in women." "Damn, where did you find this pretty little thing?" Josh asked. Emily felt both angered and flattered for some reason. It was true she was not that used to guys flirting with her, but given what she knew about this slime bucket, flattery should have been the farthest thing from her mind, and it wasn't. Clearly, she knew she needed some professional help. "You don't get to ask about her. You don't even get to acknowledge that she is even here," Alex said. Emily could hear the rage welling within him. Hearing Josh mention Emily was obviously a sore spot for Alex. Emily beamed with pride and a little bit of fear. She had never had a man who stood up for her like that. "Wow, you are touchy there," Josh said, picking up on the sweet button. Emily knew that Josh might try to exploit that weapon, but she was pretty sure the
censored
was not going to have a chance to. "Why are we still talking?" Alex asked. Josh smiled. "Oh, big brother. You have always been in such a hurry. You have to stop and relax sometimes. You really need to learn how to enjoy life instead of taking everything so serious all the time." Josh was playing with Alex now, taunting him. Emily had to smile because apparently Josh did not know his brother nearly as well as he thought he did. Alex had no ego about anything, and he could not be goaded or taunted. The only time Emily had ever really seen him show any uncontrollable emotional reflex was when Josh had just mentioned her name. As much as it made her proud, it also put a bit of fear into her heart. She did not want to be the reason that Alex got hurt if he wasn't able to control the rage when her name was mentioned. And you have always been one to delay the inevitable. You tried to kill me. You are trying to interfere with this mission. Don't you understand that if we don't put the Sepulchre somewhere really safe, then our planet is in grave danger? You won't even have a kingdom to rule over if that happens. Big bro, you are talking about something that has a very slim chance of ever happening. Grandpa hid that thing on this faraway rock in the middle of nowhere because he knew it would never be found. Now you want to go and mess that up? I mean, since you have it, I'm going to put it somewhere safer. But really, to go through all this trouble to fix something that isn't broken is kind of pathetic. Especially when it's about to cost you the throne. They know where I am, they know I came back here. If something did happen to me, then the kingdom would be yours anyway. That would make you happy. Well, yeah, of course it would, but it is unlikely. Unless I make it likely. Hell, I decided to go one farther and make it damn certain. That is why I sent those morons after you. I knew I should have chosen better, but time was short. I just hope you know what you are getting at. If you take the throne the same way you do everything else in life, then it is just going to look like a joke, and someone will probably assassinate you, Alex said with a smirk. The first rays of sun were now shining through the doorway, and it was actually starting to get a little bit bright in the warehouse. Emily felt instantly better, just knowing that the sun had risen. It somehow made everything less threatening and less frightening all around, just by the fact that it was not all done in shadows. That may be, but I'll take my chances, Josh said. He growled a low rumbling roar that sprung out of his throat like some inverted tornado, and engulfed the entire room. Emily could actually feel the air whirling around her body, from the force of the blast of his voice blasting through the air. In an instant, Josh was flying through the air in full lion form, lunging at Alex's throat. Alex was quicker and faster. In the blink of an eye, he was flying through the air, also transformed. He caught Josh and knocked him to the ground before he landed right on top of him. Emily's heart soared, hoping that the fight would be a quick victory for Alex, but something told her not to count Josh out yet. He was the younger brother, but he was also power-hungry and insane, which in her experience always ended up being a great asset in any physical altercation. Josh flipped backwards and knocked Alex off his back. Alex was catapulted through the air at least 10 feet. Emily winced as she saw him land painfully on his back. In a flash, Josh was there biting and clawing at the back of Alex's neck. She heard Alex letting out a few vicious cries of rage, and a few whines of pain interspersed as he tried to gain the vantage point. Emily wished to hell that there was something that she could do to put an end to it all. Alex twisted his body and joked Josh's paw hard over his shoulder, sending the younger brother flipping to the ground. The concrete cracked beneath the impact, and Emily staggered backwards from the force of the blow as if she were trying to stand up straight in an earthquake. Josh was starting to get up, but he was definitely moving slower. Alex didn't give him time to breathe a second. The older lion was on top of him, his jaws gnashing and tearing at Josh's head and the back of his neck. His paw was wrapped strongly around Josh's neck, and Emily could see that he was pulling hard, as if he were trying to choke his brother. Josh began to thrash and move wildly, trying to use every last-ditch effort he had in him to get out of the vicious rear chokehold that Alex was applying. The more Josh struggled, the tighter the hold seemed to get, and to add insult to the injury, Alex continued to bite and gnaw at the young lion's head, drawing heavy gashes and blood. Emily turned away from the gore, and for a moment she thought that Alex might be going too far. She knew that Alex would never forgive himself if he killed his brother in a rage. His brother needed to be locked up, not murdered. Alex was good and just, and Emily knew that he didn't have it in him to take his life, no matter how deserving. But she knew that she couldn't interfere. She was afraid that if she even said anything, it might enhance Alex's rage. She realized at that moment that she really had never communicated with Lion Alex. She really did not know what he understood, or what his reasoning abilities were like when he was fully in that state. Suddenly Alex stopped applying pressure. He roared loudly at the silent and still lion that was lying in his arms. Alex moved his arm and let Josh slump to the floor. Emily could see his
censored
rising and falling rhythmically. Alex had not killed Josh. She knew that he had wanted to, but she knew that Alex had a better heart in him than that. As he came forward to her, she watched him transform back into her beautiful Alex. She was now totally used to it, and it was actually kind of a beautiful thing to watch. When she first saw it, the sight had frightened her senseless. She had to laugh about those moments now. Alex wrapped her in his arms and held her close. His warmth was so sweet and inviting. The relief that was moving throughout her entire being at that moment was the most insane high she ever could have imagined. It was like every ounce of adrenaline had just been switched on and given orders to invade every single cell in her body. Her whole body was twitching and tingling with happiness. "I know the secret now," Alex said. "Josh was right, it has to be a king's blood. That is the only way to open the magic of the sepulchre." "Your grandfather planned all of this, didn't he?" Emily asked. "Yeah, he did. He sure did." Alex took his thumb and bit into it gently, allowing the blood to just come to the surface of the wound, and applied the pressure to the flat space on the sepulchre right above the keypad. The red light from before was now turning purple as Alex started to type in the numbers. This was everything that he had worked for. It was everything that his grandfather had dreamed of, and it was going to put everything right for his people. Emily knew that Alex was going to find a way to destroy the sepulchre, so that his planet and his people would never be at risk like they had been for all these years. But first he had to find a proper place to hide it where it would be unable to be touched by anyone but him. When Alex finished typing in the code, all of the lions on Earth were going to be changed back into their true hybrid selves, but all of them had spent their lives as lions. They were not going to have the faintest idea how to become functioning humans. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Emily realized right then that she had to stop Alex from doing this. Emily grabbed Alex's hand as he brought it down to type in the final sequence of numbers. He looked up at her with a look of confusion and concern spread across his handsome face. "What is it? You can't do this. These lions will never be like you. They have never been given the ability to reason and to communicate or conduct their lives like people. That is not something that someone can just learn. You have to be born to it. They are born to being animals. I think it will be doing all of them a great disservice to do this." Alex stood up and looked her in the eyes. Emily could see in his eyes that he knew she was right. He looked back at the sepulchre with a steely cold look of regret and almost shame. What had he been about to do? Emily could see the thoughts forming within him. "You're right. What have I been thinking? I can't do that to them." "Right, you have the sepulchre. Take it and hide it. Find a way to destroy it so that it can't be used to harm your people ever again." Alex pulled her close and
censored
her sweetly. Emily felt bad in a way for crushing the dream that Alex had carried with him for so long, but she finally helped him realize what the mission he was following really was. It was to destroy the sepulchre, and it was to find her. As cheesy as it sounded to even think that, she felt it was true. If it wasn't for the mission that brought Alex there, she never would have met the man of her dreams. She never would have had the most amazing adventure and realized what she was really capable of and how strong she could become. She liked to think that she found happiness, but truthfully happiness found her. Chapter 11. Alex secured the chains around Josh's wrist and gave him one final check before exiting the cylinder. Emily watched as Josh's eyes widened with fear and rage. He continued to writhe and joke in the chains, trying to escape. The type of chains and the handcuffs that Alex had produced from inside the cylinder were a type of material that she had never seen before. The chains were tightly surrounded by a blue light that made a strange sound and flashed like lightning whenever Josh tried to break them. He continued to recoil from the shocks that he was receiving, which was just serving to make him angrier. Emily felt bad for laughing, but the bastard deserved it. Alex told her that he was taking Josh home to stand trial. The other soldiers who had betrayed him to help Josh were likely either on their way back to Zuha or they were hiding out in the galaxy somewhere. When he got back, he would put a hefty price on their heads for their return and hire some bounty hunters to track them down. They would be found. 2 former soldiers were going to stick out like a sore thumb. Alex took Emily's hand and walked a few minutes with her in the bright San Diego sunshine. They had used the cylinder that Josh had arrived in to transfer them instantly to the cylinder that Alex had arrived in. It had been so insane to feel the effects of being swapped out and transmigrated that way. Emily remembered thinking that it was much faster, but not quite as much fun as their plane ride had been. Emily was holding her breath, wondering what Alex was going to say. She wanted to stop him and talk first. She wanted to just tell him how much she loved him and wanted to be with him. She didn't want him to go. She needed to be with him. It wasn't right that he was about to fly across the galaxy away from her. She wanted to tell him all of this, but she didn't. She was hoping that he would say it first, so that she didn't have to. Even after all she had been through the past few days, she was still having trouble expressing herself and just saying what she was feeling. It was so damn frustrating. When was it going to end? Alex stopped in a clearing and looked up at the sun. It was so beautiful and bright. Emily knew he was thinking how perfect it felt after that brutal Russian cold weather they had dealt with. Emily, I have to tell you that the past few days that I've spent with you were better than any 2 days in my entire life. I came here for a mission, and I ended up finding 2 missions. When I was taken back by my people after that first night, I knew that I had to get back here. I wanted to believe it was mostly about the mission, but I knew a big part of it was because I wanted to be with you. Emily felt the tears welling up in her eyes. This time, the shame and embarrassment did not come with them. She felt like she was being opened up, and that the real her and her real feelings were being brought out on display. She wanted to run and hide as always, but she found that she had no problem telling that part of her to get lost. She was ready to be exposed, and she was ready to tell Alex how she felt about everything. I could not explain it, Alex went on. I just knew that I had to find you again, and I had to protect you. I had a feeling that you were going to be targeted, and if there was any chance at all, then I was going to make damn sure that didn't happen. So I came back, and since then life has been like an amazing roller coaster of thrills. And I'm not just talking about all the times we were almost murdered. I mean all the times that I spent with you. All the talks we had and the time we spent. All the love we made. There has never been any time of my life where I was a fraction as happy as I've been with you. The tears were falling down Emily's cheeks now, and she could not stop them. She was on the verge of bawling as she listened to Alex's sweet words and the true emotions and feelings behind them. She knew that he loved her and that he would always carry her in his heart. Emily, I am going away now. My people need a king, and as much as I don't want the job, I can't leave them in the hands of my brother. So I have to go back and lead them. I know, Emily said. I understand you have to go. Emily, will you come with me and be my queen? The question hung in the air for a few seconds. Emily could not believe she had heard those words coming out of his mouth. That was the last thing in the world she had ever expected to hear. Somehow she was able to get the words out of her mouth, yes? Of course I will. With that, Alex swept her up in his arms and held her tightly. And he never let her go. Extended epilogue. I can't believe this day has come. Emily listened to the wedding music of Here Comes the Bride as she walked down the aisle. She had dreamt of this moment her entire life, but never thought it would actually happen. All women dream of their wedding day, but something special and magical happens when it is actually happening to them, and they find themselves walking down the aisle with a church full of people looking at them with admiration and love in their eyes that brings everything home. It is a surreal experience, and Emily kept thinking the whole thing was not real somehow. It was almost as if she didn't deserve it, and it was a tease that was going to be taken away from her. She cleared her mind as she marched to the music. That was the old Emily talking. The new Emily knew that not only did she deserve this, but she deserved for it to be epic. It had been 4 months since she and Alex had their adventure that almost got them both killed multiple times, and they found love with each other. They had been ready to get married immediately, but the marriage of the king and queen was a huge festival that required extensive planning. Emily had never believed in destiny before, but she was damn sure a believer now. It would be absurd for her not to believe that she and Alex were destined to find each other, and that they were destined to succeed. The past few months had been a whirlwind, as Emily found herself being groomed by the council to be the new queen of Zuha. How did she go from being a veterinarian with no love life to being a queen of an entire planet? She tried not to think about this too often, because every time she did, her entire being was filled with anxiety. That was not something that anyone could ever really prepare for. You just had to have it
censored
upon you and know that there was no choice. She was going to be queen. She would gladly accept her responsibilities and her duties as queen, and do everything in her power to make the people and her king happy. The people of Zuha had been very accepting of her, even though she was an outsider. While it was not strictly forbidden for a king to marry someone who was not a native Zuharian, it was often frowned upon. But in the past few months, while being queen pro tempore as the king's fiancée, the people had gotten to know her, and she was starting to see how she had made a favorable impression on them. And she loved the people as well. She was very excited to be their queen and act as the people's liaison to the king, which was essentially what the queen's primary role was. She was expected to be the mouthpiece of the people, and to make sure their wants and needs were heard at the government level. She was so looking forward to it. Emily glanced over at her bridesmaids Laura, Amber, and her maid of honor Ellie. She had not really been able to just pick a maid of honor, so she had the girls draw straws, so that no one could be bitter about not being chosen for the honor. It was all fair and square. If she could have picked them all, then she definitely would have done so. Alex had flown them all to Zuha, and he had flown her family there as well. To see the tears in her family's eyes at her wedding was one of those moments that she would treasure forever. She was not sure she would treasure seeing tears in the eyes of her bridesmaids, though. For some reason, Emily found this to be hilarious. It was just odd to see 3 bridesmaids trying not to burst into a total tear-joking scene like out of an old 80s John Hughes movie. She loved her girls. When she explained everything that had happened to her and who Alex really was, they did not believe her at all, of course. But when she showed them the cylinder, and then transported them to Zuha with her for a few days, they were starting to come around to the idea. She felt a slight kick in her belly that almost stopped her step for a second, but then it was over, and she kept going, feeling the warm smile spreading across her face as she locked eyes with Alex. Little Christopher was awake, it seemed, and he wanted to be included in the festivities. He was almost 2 months along now, and they were awaiting Christopher's arrival anxiously. Emily was literally counting the days until he got here. She had always dreamed of being a mother. She just hoped that she was able to be the kind of mother that her son would deserve. He was going to be heir to the throne one day, and she hoped that she would be able to groom him properly for the job, if he wanted it, that is. Alex and Emily were willing to break tradition if their son decided he did not want to rule one day. But Emily secretly hoped that he would want the job. If he was going to be anything like his father, then he would be too perfect to deny the people the honor of being their king. Emily now stood in front of Alex and joined her hands with his as the two faced each other in front of the huge crowd at the royal church. The High Minister began the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen of Zuha, we are gathered here today to witness a blessed union between 2 amazing people. We will watch history happen today as we unite our beloved King Alex with our new Queen Emily. Emily stared into Alex's eyes and felt like the entire universe disappeared around them. No matter what happened, it was always going to be just them and their son who really mattered. They would rule this peaceful world to the best of their ability, and they would love the people. But it would always be the two of them in their own little world together. I love you, Alex. Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my friend's book, Kane, a paranormal shifter romance. About Summer Cooper. Thank you so much for reading. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for me to be a full-time author. I hope you enjoy reading my books as much as I do writing them. Besides, obviously, reading and writing, I also love cuddling my dogs, shouting at Alexa being upside down, aka yoga, and driving my family cray-cray. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, BookBub. Get in touch at hello@summercooper.com. www.summercooper.com. Closing credits. This has been King from the Sky. Written by Summer Cooper. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovie Books Limited.